Life's a ride, so let's make it count. Cherish every moment, that's what it's about. Tune in together, we're building our groove. Every beat, every laugh, we're ready to move. A little laughter, some love, we're soaring high. Every single episode reaching for the sky. News on the airwaves, spreading good vibes. Friends together, watch how our spirits rise. Kick back, unwind, leave the troubles behind. This podcast is gold, the treasure you'll find. With every word, we'll light up your day. Join the conversation, let's laugh all the way. A little laughter, some love, we're soaring high. Every single episode reaching for the sky. News on the airwaves, spreading good vibes. Friends together, watch how our spirits rise. Kick back, unwind, leave your troubles behind. This podcast is gold, a treasure you'll find.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the morning show. Good morning, Arctic and Miss Doodle. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to hear. How about you, Fox?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate you both so very much. Hope you had a great weekend.
Thank you for having me up there.
Thank you. Appreciate you very much. And everybody in that chat, welcome back to you as well. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. I hope everybody's having a great start to their Monday. Today is Mrs. Dago's birthday, so
Yeah,
yeah,
happy birthday.
she's 21 again, just like Doodle said.
Yeah, 21 only comes like 2 or 3 times. So celebrate while you got it. You're right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yesterday, of course, and now we're going to cover that today because my internet was down for almost 2 days. Gotta love that. Miss Brandy's birthday was yesterday, the OG. So we'll make sure that we cover that as well. Thank you guys for all the birthday wishes for her. Her daughter, our daughter, picked her up and said, "It's your choice, whatever you want to do, let's go." And off they went. So she's going to enjoy herself today. I don't know what they're doing. It is what it is, but we'll see what happens. She doesn't get to do a whole lot. Plus, it's kind of a mother-daughter thing. They don't get to do that often anymore. So she said thank you to Doodle, and then out the door she went. So
Well, you're welcome, Brandy, when you come back and hear me.
right. So thank you guys for that. I appreciate it very much. Again, welcome everybody back to the morning show for Coffee in a Cold Case, guys. We got a weird one today, right here in Ohio, out of Circleville. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the Circleville letters.
Oh, yeah. I covered that one around Halloween time.
It's wild. The death of Ron Gillespie, amongst quite a few other weird things that went on with this, is absolutely still unsolved. And wow, that's all I can say. It's interesting. And I'm going to be doing another thing too about Northeast Ohio alone. There's 20 plus unsolved cold cases still just in Northeast Ohio that have never, they have no idea of what has happened. So there's a lot. I've been looking into these and accidentally fell into the Ohio thing and I couldn't believe it. So it's wild. We're probably going to cover that in itself, which is multiple people in that one situation. So I don't know, but it's wild. And it is from Ohio, SRB, Circleville, Ohio. Isn't that what I said, or did I say something else?
Yeah, you said Circleville.
I thought I did. I thought I said Ohio. I don't know. It is what it is. Sorry if I misappropriated the word. I may not have heard what I said. So either way, it is definitely from Ohio. And it's a wild, weird situation. They thought they had solved the situation too. Oh, yeah. Sorry, SRB. I got you. And then it continued on. So that wasn't what it was. Pretty wild, guys, as you'll see. And again, I appreciate you all joining us today. Like I said, SRBBBB is in the house, and Matahari, welcome back. Yeah. Let's try that one more time. Peggy Bradenbaugh, welcome back to you. Mark and Betty, cheers and welcome from over the pond. Great to have you guys here. Klein is in the house. Missing Black People Have Forgotten. Thank you for joining us again, Klein. And thank you for joining us the other day, guys. I appreciate you guys very much. Klein was here with us, and oh my goodness gracious, Mama Bear's in the house. Welcome, Mama Bear.
Hello.
The gang's all here now.
Hey, Mama Bear.
Hiya. Hi, Doodle.
Right, my three favorite people's in the house with me. Can't go wrong there. Josie West, welcome back to you. I hope you're feeling good, dear. Again, Klein, thank you for joining us the other day on the last show I had. I appreciate you jumping up here on panel with us and talking a little bit about what you cover and what you do. I'm grateful to have you in the community for sure. And looking forward to working with you soon as well. For those of you that aren't familiar with Klein and the Missing Black People Have Forgotten, joined Doodlebug on her show not too long ago, twice actually, I believe, and did some coverage on some very, very needed cases that need looked into. So hopefully we'll have that link dropped in here pretty soon for Klein and Taylor.
I did it.
Oh, thank you, Doodoo. Welcome back, Taylor. Good to see you. Miss Stormy, good to have you back in the house. Thank you, SRB, very much. And Stormy and all of you that are putting these up here. She appreciates you guys so very much. Let's see. Josie West, again, I hope you're feeling better. Doodlebug, of course, up here with us. Antarctic and Mama Bear. We got a 3 for today. I'm excited. Dana Pup and Stuff, welcome back to you. Nancy Drew, Murder Mysteries, Delmarva, welcome back as well. Mr. Charles, hello and welcome, my friend. Lisa Joe's in the house. Welcome back, Miss Lisa. Thank you for joining us today. Let's see. All right. So far, that's it. So far, 24 awesome peeps in the house. 16 likes. Let's see if we can make that match, guys, if we can. Miss Wisdom, the lovely Miss Sherry's in the house. Thank you for joining us as well, Miss Sherry. Absolutely, Matahari. Absolutely. Always do. Always do. And it's never enough, in my opinion, but she is the queen and love of my life. Thank you guys for putting these links up here. Mind of Monsters there. The lovely Miss Doodlebug and her awesome channel as well. She's doing so well. Thank you guys that were over there supporting her this morning again. What she does her morning missing. She's doing a great job, and I'm very, very, very happy to see everybody supporting it. You guys, it's amazing, and you're doing a great job, Doodle. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone that comes in there. Just get those faces out there. Oh, no, don't be sorry, SRB. I you know how I am with links. I get too carried away and just start dropping everybody.
Oh, it happens. It happens. No big deal. Oops. Sorry, everyone. So how are you today, Mama Bear?
I'm hanging in there.
Okay. Well, okay.
Just hanging in there.
All right. Well, that's better than bad. So
Yeah.
you could have said bad, but you didn't. So I'll go with that. The first thing I do want to do, you guys, is put something up here. A situation we've already dealt with this once. It's been beginning of the summer, maybe this past summer. But we're back there again, and either way, it doesn't matter how many times it's happened. It's still very important. Miss Brady B, the OG that comes in here, she's been with this channel for over 3 years now. Her niece has gone missing again.
Oh no.
Kaylee Kinder, 14 years old, dark blonde hair, green eyes, of course, a female, was last seen February 1st wearing a camo sweatshirt, jeans, black Crocs. She has a faint scar on her upper lip, maybe on foot with someone. And this is out of Arkansas, Claiborne County. If anybody knows anything whatsoever about Kaylee, where she is, who she's with, or what's going on with her, please contact Cleburne County Sheriff's Department at 501-362-8143. Again, it's a situation, we've covered this once, and she was found safe and brought home. I don't know if she took off again on her own or what the deal is at this point, but again, I just want to share it, and hopefully we can get her home as soon as possible. Were you going to say something, Mom Bear?
Oh, I just said, darn it.
Yeah, and it's obvious she runs away. Okay, it doesn't matter to me whether she runs away or somebody takes her, whatever. She's still a child, 14 years old, does not need to be out there on her own or without her parents. So please share this out throughout your social media accounts. And again, if anybody knows this that is in the Arkansas area, has any ideals, please contact Claiborne County Sheriff's Office.
Hey, Brandy.
I'll
Is there
print
any?
I'll print some of her flyer off and try to hang some around the couple of towns that I'm surrounding right now.
Yeah, I figured you probably would do something like that. That's awesome. Welcome, Brandy. Good to have you here, dear. Are there any updates on Kaylee by any means, Brandy, that you know of?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay. So this is 2 days, and I can't remember how many days she was missing the last time. It was I think at least 48 hours. Either way.
Yeah, it seems like a couple days.
Yeah, either way, it's still, she should not be out there by herself. It's a dangerous situation in my opinion, and I just keep her in your thoughts, keep Brandy's family in your thoughts, that we can get her home as soon as possible. Again, Cleburne County Sheriff's Department, 501-362-8143. If we do get any updates, we will let everybody know 100%.
Big
And
hug, Brandy. You've had a rough couple days.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Brandy, for that one, hon. And one moment here, guys. Sorry, everybody.
You should be.
I always am. Always am.
And I whispered.
Arctic, do you know if Taj Massey has been found yet?
Can you put the flyer up? That way I can put the face with the name.
Out of North Carolina. Yeah, I'm putting it up right now. I just didn't know if you knew by the name. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. That Amber Alert's been cleared.
Okay, thank you. Thank God. That's wonderful to hear. Okay. Oops. One moment here. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to get these. Yes. Oh, we're going to be touching on that too, Miss Brandy. You don't worry about that, since I wasn't here yesterday. Again, sorry, you guys. I don't know if there's any new details on this. Miss Sharon Harbaugh, 71, female, of course, red hair and unknown colored eyes, has gone missing. Last seen February 1st of this year in the area of Waterford Drive in Frederick, Maryland. She may be traveling in a silver 2007 Toyota Highlander with Maryland tags 11606N4, and she was last seen wearing a pink jacket with men's pajamas underneath. If you have any information about Miss Sharon, please contact 301-600-2102. And that's if you see this lady anywhere or if you know anything, please do that. I appreciate that so very much. Thank you, Nancy, for the update there as well. Also, it's customary when we cover the cold case stuff, I like to put up older cases as well, you guys. So, sorry, older missing cases. My apologies. Oh, no worries, bud. Real life is real life. You got to do what you got to do. Um, Another disappearance we have here: Christopher Bush, age 2, male, 2'5" to 2'10", 25 to 40 pounds, black hair, brown eyes. On April 5th of 1975, Christopher was last seen in the Germantown, Pennsylvania area. His home was destroyed in a fire, so he was staying with a babysitter and her husband and daughter in the 6300 block of Morton Street in Germantown, PA. The babysitter took Christopher out in her maroon 1966 Ford station wagon. At around 10 a.m., she left Christopher unattended in her car in the area of Chew Avenue and Maryland Streets. While she ran into a deli for about 10 minutes. It's unclear if the car was locked or unlocked when she left, but the babysitter said that he was able to get out on his own. When she returned to the car, Christopher was gone. His cowboy hat was the only thing that was left behind in the car. He was last seen wearing a blue denim coat with a white fur collar and light blue corduroy pants. If you have any information about Christopher Bush, his whereabouts, or if you are Christopher Bush, I know this picture is very old and kind of black and white, hard to differentiate, but still it could help. And if that's you, okay, I like to say that because it very well could be. Please contact 215-686-3093 at Philadelphia Police Department, folks. It's an old one, but you just never know. We've seen stranger things happen, you guys. So either way. All right. Also, sorry, everyone. We have Zachary Joseph. His age is unknown. 5'10" to 6 foot tall, black hair, brown eyes. He was last seen February 1st, 2025, between 10 and 12 p.m., 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. by his mother while at St. Francis Hospital in Wilmington, Delaware. He doesn't have his phone, ID, or wallet. His mom has his phone, but unsure of what time he was discharged. Now, I don't know if there's any updates on this yet as well, but still, either way, that's a picture of Zachary there. Also, if you have any information or Zachary, oh, he has been found. That's awesome. Thank you, Nancy, so very much. See, always good. Always good to hear these. They've been found. I love hearing those. Very good stuff. So, in that being said, we're going to move on to, sorry, Johanna Carasquillo. I hope I said that right. Age 30, 5'2", 164 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes. She was last seen January 30th of 2025 around Roselle, New Jersey, and she's known to frequent Lakewood, New Jersey. She requires medication and was last seen wearing a gray hoodie, black pants, and was carrying a black and white backpack. If you have any information about Johanna, please contact the Roselle Police Department at 908-245-5600. Again, no new alerts on this. Nancy will let me know, obviously. But if you have any ideas or seen her, know anything, please contact that number there, folks. Once again, I appreciate it. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. And thank you again, Nancy, for these. I got one more here. Hold on. All right. Welcome, Kim Marin. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, Lord. Sinus and flu. It's going around so bad.
Well, Cassie thinks she has COVID again, and Molly has it again also.
Didn't Molly just have it last week?
Yep. She said she's been sick for like 3 weeks.
There's a
Good
code
God.
for your phone. Text it to me, please.
That's insane. Well, good Lord, Molly and Cassie both. Please get better. I'm glad to see you, Kim, and I hope you're feeling better. That's wonderful to hear that you're over it finally. Yeah, I just wrote that name down. Are you familiar, Arctic Caleb Gutadaro? Have you heard that name? There's no picture, but he's missing out of Amherst up near Buffalo.
I haven't. I can go check and see if there's any updates. Hold on a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Kim. He's going to check to see if he was found, Kim. While we're waiting on that, again, we have another cold case disappearance here. Catherine May Quackenbush was 17 years old, white, 5'2", 105 pounds, strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. Catherine was last seen July 14th of 1981 in Salisbury, Maryland. Catherine was a resident of Georgia and was in the Del Mar area with her brother visiting her father. On the evening of her disappearance, she planned to go to the bowling alley in Salisbury, Maryland, where her boyfriend didn't arrive on time to pick her up. Oh, I'm sorry. When her boyfriend didn't arrive on time to pick her up, it's alleged that she began walking southbound down Route 13, and her boyfriend came to pick her up 5 minutes later. She was nowhere to be found, and then was reported as missing. Foul play is suspected. Let's see here. If you have any information that could help locate Catherine, please contact Maryland State Police, Salisbury Police Barracks at 410-749-3101. Anybody that knows anything possibly about Catherine May Quackenbush, or if you are Catherine, please contact that number. Again, 410-749-3101. Thank you so very much. Again, Nancy, for all those. Welcome back, Arctic. Thank you, Stormy. Did you find anything, sir?
No updates, and there's very little coverage on him.
Right. Yeah, it's the first time I'd heard it. I wrote it down. I'm going to look into it. Thank you, Miss Kim, for that. And I think I do have one more here. Actually, I'm going to throw up. All right. And that'll do it for those for this morning. All right. We have Audrey Fabiano out of Sumter, South Carolina. Last seen December 24th.
She's been found safe.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but she's found safe.
No, please, please. Well, then I'll switch that out with this one. And hopefully he's been found as well. Thank you, Sherry. Alan Chalapa. This is out of Andarco, Oklahoma. Any ideas on an update on this one, guys? An indigenous child. He's enrolled with the Apache tribe of Oklahoma. 15 years old, last seen January 12th of this year. Black hair, weight 170 pounds. Let me see here. Alan left Norman and was taken to the Temptations restaurant in Anadarko. I'm sorry. He was last seen wearing all black with yellow stripes and tennis shoes. If you have any information about Alan Chalapa, please contact the Chickasaw Nation Light Horse Police Department at 580-436-1166. And I appreciate that very much. Again, this has been a while now, so hopefully something happens with this one, and appreciate it so very much. Thank you for putting those out there. Welcome, Miss Paula. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. All right, y'all. Let me take some of this stuff out of here so I can keep going. All right.
Wisdom says that his mom says he's home. So he's
Alan is home.
Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you, Miss Wisdom. Wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear. Okay, hang on, guys. One moment. All right, like I said, everybody that doesn't know should know. Yesterday was Miss Brandy. Yeah. Can anybody understand that? Miss Brandy B's birthday. 29 again, as she said. So happy belated, Miss Brandy. I'm sorry I didn't get to do this yesterday. God bless. I hope you had an amazing day, which I hope you have an absolutely better year, and can't wait to do this again next year. So thank you again, Miss Brandy, for being part of this team, this family. We appreciate and love you so very much. And I hope you enjoy this.
It's your birthday today, Brandy. It's your birthday today, Brandy. Rock and roll and celebrate. We lose control and you cut the cake. The night is yours. Destiny awaits. Dance house with your closest mates. It's your birthday today, Brandy. It's your birthday today, Brandy. Grab your goodie bags. Open your gifts. Blow out your candles. Brandy!
Ooh,
Well, that was interesting.
I thought it was a little wild like she is. So
She'll
there.
say, well, since she's scared of clowns, I bet she's like, what the heck, Jaco?
Payback. I told you.
Yeah, he'll get you. You
I
don't
don't
know, you
forget.
don't expect it, but
I
he'll
forget.
get
Right. I forget things that happen now. I don't forget old things. So
you.
anyway, either way, hold on a minute. Also, of course, because we love you.
Wisdom, thank you.
What did she say?
She said, my hat's off to Arctic and Doodlebug. My phone is so busy now I can barely keep up with the family members. You guys are
Yeah.
stars.
Yep. You guys put out so many of them. That little bit that I put out is nothing. But you guys are just boom, 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 boom. And it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Heather says, why does it seem like Brandy is in trouble more than happy birthday?
I told her I'd get her back for her little TikTok thing she threw out there. There you go. There's your clown, Brandy. Your birthday clown. And this is, of course, your cake and your candles. All 300. I mean, all 29 of them. You can blow them out, dear. Make a wish, if you will. I hope you did truly have an amazingly awesome day yesterday. It was the best day you could possibly have. I hope you have a great year this year, Brandy, and happy birthday, my dear. We love you. Well, she was in here. I just seen her. And then again, like I said, her niece is missing. I'm pretty sure, like I said, that she took off, which doesn't mean anything. It's still a very serious situation. And that was the first name that I put up first this morning in the first missing poster. It's not really I don't know. I guess they don't do posters like this. Or is this an actual poster, Arctic? It's different looking than the others I've seen. So,
Well, Kenny don't have her up on the Aware Foundation or anything. I'm sure that we can get her some other flyers made and get her into MPIA and all that stuff. So
right. Again, her name is Kaylee Kinder. Again, just to reiterate this, guys, she's been missing since the first 2 days ago. 14 years old, dark blonde hair, green eyes, and last seen wearing a camo sweatshirt, jeans, black Crocs. She has a faint scar on her upper lip and maybe on foot with somebody else. And this is out of Claiborne County, Arkansas. If anybody knows anything, again, please contact the sheriff's office there at 501-362-8143. All right. Welcome, Heather. Good to see you, Rowena. Welcome back to you. Let's see here. All right. Thank you guys for being here today for that as well. All right. I think we got 34 peeps in the house. Thank you guys so very much for joining us today. I hope you're all having a great start to your day and had a great weekend. Again, today, guys, we're looking into the Circleville letters, a cold case from the 70s, the mysterious death of Ron Gillespie that flows right along with that, and many other little things that came out of this story. Thank you, SRB. It's pretty wild. Yeah, okay.
Good morning, Mystic Butterfly.
Good morning, Mystic. Thank you for joining us. Come on in, everybody. Grab a seat, get comfortable. Is anybody else in here familiar with the Circleville story? Anyone?
I am. I covered it. It's weird. Bus driver starts getting harassed and everything, saying that she's having an affair with the superintendent of schools. I mean, it's really a messed up thing. And then the daughter starts getting harassed. It's crazy.
Yeah. Then the husband to the woman that was accused of that, he ends up dying in an accident. I mean, guys, it's wild. Really wild. And there's never been, well, I won't tell you the whole story and spoil it, but yes, there was a suspect. And then once he was convicted and everything. And then
yeah, and I mean, they got the wrong guy, but I don't think they got the wrong family. I think maybe his son is the one that was responsible for it.
There's somebody else, and I agree with that too. Lisa Joe, of course you do. I knew you would. Still, either way, yeah, this was on definitely welcome. Why can't I talk today? Welcome, Mark Schumann. It was on Unsolved Mysteries as well. It's a wild situation all the way around, either way. So thank you guys for being here for it. I appreciate you very much. All right. Come on in. That needs to go away. There we go. All right. And I got, as I always do, I get different variations of things for these because a lot of these don't ever cover everything, and you like to get little bits and pieces of it to add to it. So we shall see what we're going to start here with. One moment. I think I'm going to start you guys with a news piece that they did about 12 years ago on this. And then we'll go back and cover the whole thing just to give you guys a little. Morning, Mikey. Good to see you. Last 24's in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure to hit the like button. Share this out if you will. Let's get the show on the road.
Hi, Mystic. Hi, Mikey.
All right.
Driving around Circleville today would down in the late 1970s. Nothing changes much. In fact, the population continues to go down. There would be one major change, though. Back then, there were the letters, the Circleville letters.
And a lot of it was vindictive in tone. I mean, nasty in tone. There was sexually oriented material or accusations of vulgar is the only way, to really describe them.
The letters were often threatening missives sent to people in Pickaway County. We're not talking about a couple or hundreds, but thousands of letters. They all had the same block lettering, and they would target politicians and leaders, but also just plain folks who had nothing to do with the running of Circleville at all. William Harsha is a 4th District state judge who was a prosecutor during some of the time of the letters. He received his share. Harsha says the main suspect of the letters was Paul Freshour, who lived in Grove City. Freshour was later convicted of booby-trapping a mailbox belonging to an ex-sister-in-law. That sister-in-law was a school bus driver who the letters would claim was having an affair with a school official. In fact, the sister-in-law, the bus driver, had a husband who died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Freshour was convicted of attempted murder in the failed booby trap, which included a gun that belonged to him, but he claimed had been lost or stolen. All of the he said, she said, they said of the 1970s and 80s gossip mill got mixed into Freshour's trial, and it was generally believed he was the writer. We were unable to reach him for this story, but we're told would be unwilling to do an interview with us.
Welcome,
After his
Moonlit.
conviction, something else happened. While in prison, the letters, in what looked like the same handwriting, continued.
Department of Corrections put
No, and as you'll see as we go through the other docu stuff on this that I have, Freshour didn't do this. Okay. And like Arctic said, I have the same kind of inkling that it was somebody else in the family, in my opinion. And that'll be up to you guys to make your own decisions on that based on what you see in here. But Paul, in my opinion, absolutely didn't do this. So
Paul Freshour in isolation. They restricted his access to writing materials. They checked his mail, and they insisted that there was no way he was sending these letters, but they continued.
That's part of the story no one has an answer to.
It went on after Mr. Freshour was in prison. And the focus of the concern was, well, if he's doing this, how could he be getting letters out of prison? How could he be responsible in a secure facility? And this happened.
The sheriff of Pickaway County, Dwight Radcliffe, is convinced Freshour was the man and guilty of both the attempted murder, of which he was convicted, and of being the letter writer, that he was somehow getting them out of the prison. Martin Yant, a former dispatch writer and now a private investigator, has spent a lot of time on this case and feels much differently.
Doesn't seem to fit the profile of the writer. The writer seemed to be very involved in Pickaway County politics. Paul Freshour wasn't even from Pickaway County. He's a real gentle, soft-spoken guy. I think he was framed.
Yant also received his share of letters. In one, the writer says about Paul Freshour, who was at that time in prison, "See what he got? He will not get out of prison, or Radcliffe," meaning Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, "will take his place." The writer also says, "The signs and letters will not stop." Whatever happened, the letters continued off and on with less frequency into the 1990s. Then, like it never happened. The letters stopped, and Circleville carried on like nothing had ever happened. In Circleville, I'm Mike Bowersock, NBC4.
And that's congrats and welcome back to the sauce, Moonlit. Appreciate you very much. Okay, so that's a little bit about that there, but there's so much stuff to hear about this, guys. It's a wild situation. I definitely do not think that Fresh Hour did it. There's a couple different articles I read that somebody accused that sheriff of being the one to do it, which I don't think he was either. But I'm just saying it's a weird situation either way you look at it. So let me get back to the next one here if I can get these things to work for me, because it's slow again. Okay, hold on. All right. Give me one moment, everyone. It is very weird, Rowena. Very weird. All right.
That's awesome, Moonlit.
Yeah, that always sucks when that happens. I've had it happen to me before too. It's a pain in the butt.
Welcome back to the sauce, son.
All right, folks, here we go. Let me know if the audio is okay on this. Please and thank you.
American writer and literary critic
Sounds
and
good.
Foley Broyard once opined, "In an age like ours, which is not given to letter writing, we forget what an important part it used to play in people's lives." In the 1970s, the ability to instantly communicate through emails, texting, or social media was still decades away. So people employed the use of paper and pen, the mailman, and mailboxes to stay in touch. One of life's simple joys was writing and receiving letters. Through these, people built friendships, sustained relationships, and strengthened romances. But for the residents of one small town in Ohio, the fun of exchanging letters was turned to terror when many of them received anonymous and threatening handwritten messages. These poison pen letters of the mid-1970s came to be known as the Circleville letters, and for nearly 2 decades, they spread fear through the mail in the town of Circleville, Pickaway County, Ohio. Hi, I'm Andrew Fitzgerald, and welcome to another episode of Every Town. Imagine how an untraceable, handwritten letter could expose an illicit affair, punish a man with likely false conviction, cause an untimely death, and bring a town into complete chaos. These were among the destructive consequences of the so-called Circleville letters. In particular, they most severely affected the family of Ron and Mary Gillespie, effectively ruining the lives of 2 men in the family. One died, and one spent several years in jail for a crime he claimed he didn't commit. Despite some theories about the real identity of the letter writer, the Circleville letters mystery remains unsolved today. When opening a mailbox, one might dread finding a pile of envelopes containing bills to pay, bank loans to settle, or insurance claims that were denied. On a brighter day, the mailbox may bring welcome surprises like an invitation to a dear friend's wedding, a letter of acceptance to a university, a birthday or Christmas card from a loved one. But what are the odds that an envelope will contain a heart-stopping message like, "Your family and friends should know that you were sexually molested by your Uncle Mike 12 years ago," or "Don't abort your mistress, baby, or else you will die"? It surely would send chills down the recipient's spine, knowing that they're loathed by a letter sender who is not only anonymous, but also out for blood. This hypothetical scenario became a chilling reality for several people in the town of Circleville and the surrounding Pickaway County area in Ohio starting in 1976. A number of people, mostly those who were embroiled in small town controversies, began receiving letters that exposed their vile secrets and carried veiled threats. The damning handwritten messages sometimes came with lewd drawings and sexually explicit notes. In every case, the letter was written in a distinctive block writing style, possibly done deliberately to conceal the writer's true handwriting. These letters were postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, state capital, 28 miles away from Circleville, but they lacked the sender's name and return address. Untraceable and unknown, the nasty letters presented the tormented recipients with an unseen enemy. In a town with a population of just 12,000, it sometimes felt like everyone knew everyone else and perhaps knew nearly everything about everyone else. Could the mysterious Circleville letters writer be one of the town's common faces with an uncommon agenda? In 1976, while Cleveland, Ohio became the most bombed city in the U.S. due to a continuing gang war between the Italian and Irish mobs, bombs of another kind were being placed inside mailboxes 170 miles away in Circleville's mailboxes. Many of the town's inhabitants started receiving poison pen letters that exploded with shocking allegations. Perhaps the hardest hit victim was Mary Gillespie, who was married with children and worked as a school bus driver at the local Westfall school.
Thank you,
In
Sherry.
December of 1976, Mary received the first frightening letter from an unknown sender. It accused her of having an extramarital affair with Gordon Massey, the superintendent of the school district she worked for, and said that she should end it. "Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about knowing him," part of the message said. And in true stalker fashion, the writer added something that gave Mary the chills. "I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified, and everything will be over soon." Naturally, the allegation and ominous threat shocked Mary, who initially kept it to herself. A week later, she received another message, again about her alleged affair. "Stay away from..."
You know, the one thing about this case, though, even though, like, I agree with Arctic that somebody within that family was responsible, possibly, but to know the things that they knew about all the other people is where my question lies. You know, that was the weird part of that to me. That I still, and I almost wonder if it was separate people at separate times, like somebody in the 70s doing it and then somebody different maybe in the 90s doing it until it stopped.
I don't know.
Or I don't know. It's hard to take, but what'd you say, bud?
I said I don't know because the handwriting was the same handwriting on both of the on all the letters
Yeah.
apparently. So
Yeah,
it was two different people doing it. The weird thing about everything is that Gillespie went on to go into a relationship with the bus driver, or with the superintendent that these letters accused her of having a affair with after her husband died.
very true. I was gonna say, yeah. So there's that too.
See, that's what I'm thinking, Ro. That or DNA off the envelopes, because back then no one thought not to lick an envelope because there was no such thing as DNA in the 70s.
Say that last part that you said again, Arctic. Sorry, my son walked in and completely.
I would think that they'd be able to get some DNA off the envelopes. Back in the 70s, no one thought about not leaving DNA by licking an envelope. Surely, you would think as advanced as we've come with DNA, they could get DNA or fingerprints off of those envelopes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. No fingerprints, nothing though. It's wild, you guys. Thank you,
I
Mister.
didn't stop licking envelopes until the anthrax stuff came out.
That's when I quit too. And then you know the pandemic thing happened, and I got even weirder with it. So I'll just take a rag or a sponge and do it that way if I had to, and I'm easier. Welcome, Demon. Good to see you. So yeah, 100%, very much so. Good point, though. It's a very good point.
From him, noon as well as night. Too many think this is a joke. We'll see in time. Mary hid the letters, fearing that her 35-year-old husband, Ron, would get a hold of them. She continued working, but remained vigilant, keeping a close eye on her daily activities in the hope that she would find out the person behind the incriminating letters. But her secret was soon revealed by the anonymous letter sender, no less, who wrote to Ron, informing him of Mary and Gordon's supposed affair. Just like the letters Mary had received, the first one sent to Ron concluded with a threat. His life would be in danger if he didn't tell the West Falls School Board about his wife's purported affair. Ron was devastated, though Mary denied the accusation when Ron confronted her, and they decided to keep mum about their personal troubles. But soon, rumors about Mary and Gordon's alleged liaison spread through the small town of Circleville. After a couple weeks, another letter made its way to the Gillespie's mailbox, specifically for Ron. He faced a more concrete threat that intensified his psychological torture. The message read, "Gillespie, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Make her admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBs, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out." This became too much for the couple to handle, and their world turned upside down. Ron and Mary decided to seek help, but it further complicated the problem and implicated people close to them. Shockingly, it even proved fatal for Ron. The Gillespies shared their predicament with trusted family members: Ron's sister Karen, Karen's husband's Paul Freshour, and Paul's unnamed sister. They discussed the possibilities of who could have written the letters, and Mary's intuition directed her suspicion to her fellow school bus driver, David Longberry. Mary said that David had gotten angry when she rebuffed his advances towards her, so writing the humiliating and menacing letters was his way of getting back at her. So the group decided that Paul would write David a letter informing him that they knew he was the one sending the messages to Ron and Mary, and that he should stop it right away. Their plan seemed to have succeeded, as the anonymous letters ceased for several weeks. They believed that their suspected culprit had understood the message loud and clear. But as Ron and Mary were getting their lives back to normal, they were besieged by another round of turmoil. This time it was worse. Planted on the sides of roads were signs claiming that school superintendent Gordon Massey and Ron and Mary's 12-year-old daughter were involved in a sexual relationship. Such a malicious and foul attack was beyond comprehensible, and Ron had to do everything he could to protect his wife and children. It reached a point when he had to wake up way earlier than usual just to drive around Circleville and remove the nasty signs before anyone could see them, especially his daughter, while on their way to school. Ron continued getting letters warning him.
Also, can you imagine SW Collectibles? Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Can you imagine and Heather, sorry I didn't see you there, Miss Heather. Critical Minds, welcome. Demon Dog, good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Can you imagine the work that went into doing this? Like, somebody had to drive around putting all these signs out, write these letters, and be nosy enough to know the things that they know from all these people too. That's the other side of it. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's wild. The work that was put into this is really insane to me. So and sad that this guy had to go through all this. And in the end, like Arctic said, they ended up being in a relationship together after all this too. So that says something upon itself, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So it's wild. Absolutely wild.
Him that his movements and activities were monitored, perhaps getting accustomed to being the prime targets of the Circleville letters. Ron and his family continued on about their lives. Most likely, this infuriated their unnamed enemy. 9 months after the first letters were sent to Mary and Ron, things then escalated and got out of control. It was quite a normal Friday on August 19, 1977. Ron was at home that evening looking after his younger children when he received a mysterious phone call.
Hello?
The sinister voice on the other end of the line told Ron that he knew where he lived and what his pickup truck looked like. Ron thought he recognized the voice as that as David, which confirmed his suspicion about the identity of the unidentified letter writer. It was the last straw that broke Ron's long-stretched patience, and it sent him into a rage. He told his children he had to go confront someone.
Welcome, JC.
Hurriedly, Ron grabbed his pistol and took off in his red and white pickup truck. But a few minutes later,
I don't know that all the sound effects and background are needed, you guys, so sorry about that, but literally have the guy in the background going, raw, come on now. Anyway, you're getting the gist of the story, and it's pretty wild, but this here is kind of sad to me that this had to happen like this. It really is. And it still makes me wonder if there was somebody else involved here with this part of this too. Not somebody else, but the person that's doing this is what I'm saying.
later, tragedy struck the Gillespie family. In an unexpected turn of events, Ron died on the spot when his truck crashed into a tree at 10:30 p.m. on 5 Points Pike. Ron succumbed to massive internal injuries. Pickaway County Coroner Dr. Ray Carroll pronounced Ron dead at the scene. It was Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe who headed the police investigation. And after examining Ron's gun, Radcliffe determined that a single shot had been fired in between the time Ron left his house and hit the tree.
Welcome, Tomboy. Good to see you. Good to have you here today. I hope you're having a great start to your day.
However, there was no evidence suggesting anyone had actually been shot at the crash site, and neither the bullet nor the casing were ever found. That was the first mystery surrounding Ron's dark fate. The second one came after Ron's autopsy results revealed that at the time of his death, his blood alcohol content was 0.16, which in Ohio is 1.5 times more than the legal limit. However, Ron's family refuted that he was a drinker and attested to his teetotaler lifestyle.
And that's the other side of this is the whole family has stated that this man didn't drink. Now, I'm not saying that with the situation he's come to here is, he's dealing with this stress of this, that, and everything else. Not to say that that wouldn't make you drink, but he's not a drinker. He's not a normal drinker on a daily basis, regular basis at all, but he's 0.16. That's a lot. He had quite a bit that night, obviously, which could explain the accident as well. But I still think there's other things that go along with this accident. Leslie and Billy, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Based on the test result, Sheriff Radcliffe changed Ron's declared cause of death from foul play to a drunk driving accident. Paul Freshour, Ron's brother-in-law, said, "The sheriff agreed with me that there was foul play, and then when I contacted him again, he'd changed his attitude completely. Then he would..."
See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, Doodle, let me ask you a question, dear. In a situation like this, if you declare foul play being a possibility in a case that you guys are covering,
then there's a possibility that there is a crime at that scene that has, and you see that there's evidence of a crime at that scene.
right? So that's why you would say that, right?
Yes,
Of course.
you'd have to have some kind of evidence.
So just because the autopsy comes back and finds that there's alcohol in this man's system, you're going to go and turn it into a DUI situation? Like, I don't understand that at all.
If there was alcohol in his system, yes, it definitely is a DUI situation because he was intoxicated. But there obviously was something besides that as the crime, because that wouldn't be the foul play. That would just be another charge added to whatever crime happened if that was there.
Yeah, so you would just add that. You wouldn't change the whole situation around.
Definitely, right.
Because obviously there's something that points to foul play there that would make you say that in the first place, right?
Yes, foul play wouldn't be the DWI.
Of course. That's weird to me. This sheriff is a little unnerving to me, period, because of the way he handled this whole thing throughout the whole thing. I don't like him, and that's just me. But hey, Stephen, welcome. Good to see you, my friend. Leslie says, "I need prayers. Asha, granddaughter, is at the emergency room, can't breathe. Weird, she's not sick." Oh Lord, Leslie, I'm so sorry, and you definitely have my thoughts and prayers for sure. As I'm sure you do with all of us. I'm so sorry, and I hope that they figure out what's going on and what happened.
Yeah, prayers.
Yeah, that's scary.
That's terrible.
Does she have any allergies? Just not anything that she may have gotten into, Leslie? That's scary. I'm so sorry to hear that.
How old is she?
She's a little, I think. I think she is.
Hi,
I
Steven.
remember talking about her before, but either way, whatever it is, we're definitely praying. I promise you that, Leslie. Asthma.
That's what I was thinking, SRB.
Yeah, she could have. You don't have to be sick to acquire asthma. That's how it happened with me. But I had things in the past that caused it. So either way, our thoughts are with you, Leslie, and our prayers as well. I'm so sorry, my dear. Appreciate you being here too, and I hope everything works out well. Welcome, Dawn, Southern Gal True Crimes in the house, guys. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're having a great day.
Hi, Dawn.
He was telling me that it wasn't foul play, that the suspect had passed a polygraph test. It was another gray area that wasn't resolved.
That's a good question, Critical. The whole thing is strange to me how they didn't figure this out. I don't know. They said that the sheriff, the idiot sheriff, still thinks that that Freshour is the one that did this, even while he's in prison, and they've watched and controlled everything he did, and still said he somehow got them out. And I don't believe that at all. It doesn't make any sense. Because I don't believe he had anything to do with any of this in the first place. But the man goes to prison for it, so that just tells you right there.
Ron's wrecked pickup truck was disposed of in an Ohio junkyard, a questionable decision because it prevented further examinations of the vehicle for more clues about Ron's death. This tragedy could have pricked the conscience of the Circleville Letters anonymous writer and convinced him or her to stop all the vile schemes. On the contrary, the ruthless author relentlessly continued writing more poison pen letters, and many more lives were turned upside down. apparently dissatisfied with Sheriff DeWitt.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leslie. Yeah, I knew she was a little. Hopefully it all works out.
She
Like I
said they're
said,
doing they don't know. They're doing viral workup.
yeah, there's a lot of these viruses and bacterial infections going around that nobody even knows what they are right now. Everybody's getting sick from weird things that they don't even understand. I've had weird sinus things. Arctic had a thing that he had no idea what it was. It just kept going around and around. So at Doodle, we all know what Doodle just went through. It's just there's a lot going on out there right now with all this sicknesses and stuff. So just prayers up, guys. That's all we can do. It's the best thing, and I pray that everything works out for her. Yeah, that made sense, Arctic. It absolutely did make sense. So 100%. Welcome, PJ. Good to see you, dear. Says hi, Taylor, JC, Mama Bear, Leslie, Arctic, Dago, and Wisdom. Now take a breath. You did it all. Wonderful to see you, PJ. Thank you for joining us.
Dwight Radcliffe's ruling on Ron's death, the person behind the Circleville letters sent the townsfolk messages accusing Radcliffe of concocting a cover-up of the real nature of Ron's death. The writer demanded a more thorough investigation, which made people believe he probably wanted credit for his role in the accident. Moreover, the nameless writer hurled another accusation against the sheriff that he had mishandled the investigation of sexual abuse charges filed by several children against coroner Ray Carroll.
And there's another whole story opening up right there. I'm so sorry to hear that, PJ. I hope you're staying well. Like I said, everybody's getting that stuff. So try to stay healthy. I know working with kids, being a teacher, Miss Tandy got sick, strep and ear infection. She's a teacher. All you teachers out there, I feel bad because you guys, it's almost impossible to stay healthy. Welcome, Stitches. Good to see you.
Yeah, I couldn't wait for my kids to get out of elementary school.
Lily Moon's in the house. Hey. Welcome. Wonderful to see you today. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you very much. Hope you're having a wonderful day. And you're still green.
When Preston comes in, it's almost like I need to Lysol him from head to toe. I'm just like, don't touch. No, I don't. I'm playing. I don't. But I feel like I should.
Yeah, I agree with you. Caden's in high school. He's a senior, and I still tell him, wash your hands. Don't touch this one. Stay away from that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a germ fest. Petri dish.
Yeah, and it's sad, but when Junie shows up here, I look at her for a few minutes from about 30 feet away and wait for her to see if she's coughing or not. And then I'm like, okay, you can hug me now because I just Mama Bear.
We don't want to go through like we did last year.
Last year was every other day. She was like
seriously
coughing, and it was horrible.
And sneezing, and
could not stay healthy around her at all. But yeah, so they're dirty little things. Yeah, that stomach thing is going around really bad too. I agree with that.
The norovirus is
the norovirus, right? And there's another one too. There's another one.
Parvovirus.
Parvo was that. There's another stomach virus though. I was talking to Cassie about it the one day, and she was saying that it wasn't noro, it was something else, or maybe it was SRB. One of the two of them, but either way, it was like that, but not that. It was crazy.
Well, look at the tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas. I mean,
that's blowing my mind. That was, yeah, that's crazy. I'm sorry. What the hell was it? Smallpox that came back. And there was a case of measles.
Yep.
Yeah. Oklahoma had a huge measles outbreak. Well, it's been a couple years ago, several years ago, but that was really bad too.
These are things
meningitis one too.
Yeah, well, that's like that I can expect, but like measles and smallpox and these diseases that haven't been around since like the 40s and 50s, where are they coming from? It's just crazy stuff to me. Wonderful to see you here, Lily. Lily's still green too. That's awesome.
Yay.
Miss Kim says I had the actual influenza, according to Well Now. It was terrible. The flu this year's been bad. Anybody that's had that, I feel for you. Strain A and strain B are supposedly like the worst out there that they've been in a long time.
Yeah, we just talked about that, Lisa.
That's exactly what Doodle was talking about is in Kansas, the TB stuff, which is weird. This is why I don't like going anywhere. And if I do, I feel like I should get inside a bubble and just float around,
Honestly, it probably wouldn't hurt for you to get out more because you're going to have to build an immunity if you stay home so much. Because when you do go out, you'll get sick like I do, and that takes forever to get rid of it.
I know. Well, I do get out. It's just I hate doing it sometimes. I don't like going to places like Walmart.
I don't like peopling.
Yeah, there's that too. Stitches said, Hartley, welcome and good morning. Thank you for joining us today. All of you guys, please make sure to hit that like button if you could, please. I appreciate that very much. It definitely helps us to get in the algorithm and stay there for a little while. It's okay, PJ. No worries. You got to health and real life comes before anything here. So take care of yourself before anything, please.
I'm just going to start wiping the kids down with Clorox when they come in the house.
Yeah.
Right.
The little Clorox wipes.
Right.
Sure,
Yeah.
Arctic, sure.
I work in a hospital. We haven't not had any information shared with us about. See, that's the problem. I agree with you, Lisa. They should be putting that out to any medical facility whatsoever, because that way you can be ready for things like that. And when they don't do that, that's a problem for me. I agree. Kim works in the medical field too, so I swear to God, as conspiracy as it sounds, it makes more sense than anything else right now because it's happening so often. It's crazy.
100% critical.
What did he say? Or she
Church
say?
on Sunday is a petri dish.
Yeah, right.
Especially if you're Catholic and having to drink after everybody.
Yeah, right. Going to the doctor's office is like it's like playing Russian roulette. If you go in there and you're not sick yet, just for a checkup, you might leave there sick. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so crazy. Yep. Everybody in there. I was sitting there last time not this last time, the time before I went to the doctor's, and there was 2 kids sitting with their mother, and they were all coughing, and them sitting there like I moved 3 times to get away from them. And then they called me, and I like ran to the back, and I'm like, "Thank you for calling me." She's like, "You seem excited," and I said, "I am." I said, "That whole family out there's got the croup or something going on." She's like, "Oh yeah, that happens." And the nurses and doctors, they all get sick too because they're seeing everybody. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I was worried yesterday in that we were inside that justice center, and it was like shoulder to shoulder, and I kept thinking, "Oh boy, I know I'm gonna get sick. Oh no!" So I stood by the door trying to avoid, but you couldn't. It was shoulder to shoulder.
It's the best way to do it. Absolutely.
Of course, our main protagonist, Mary Gillespie, wasn't spared. She continued to receive more vulgar messages and constant threats that drove her to take desperate measures. She turned her initial denials of an affair with school superintendent Massey into an admission of guilt, but Mary clarified that their affair started only after she had received the anonymous letters. How strange that Mary would get embroiled in a forbidden affair after receiving letters that boldly pressured her to stay away from Gordon. Mary's sister-in-law Karen and her husband Paul also had their marital woes. Paul discovered Karen was cheating on him, so he filed for divorce and gained full custody of their kids. With nowhere else to go, Karen moved out of their house and settled in a trailer in Mary's backyard. Misery loves company after all. But if Mary had thought that her misery would diminish after admitting her affair with Gordon, she was awfully wrong. The harassment tactics against her continued, yet Mary kept her job in order to support her children. But when her daughter once again became the focus of threats after 7 years of harassment, Mary's motherly instinct drew out all her courage. On the morning of February 7, 1983, while working behind the wheel of the school bus, she noticed a sign put up along the road targeting her daughter with an intimidating message. The disgusted Mary hopped out of the school bus and proceeded to rip down the sign. But it wasn't any ordinary sign, because attached to it was a box and a string, and that box contained a pistol. Upon closer examination, the gun was part of a crude booby trap designed to make the weapon go off if the sign was pulled down. Luckily, Mary didn't pull the sign in such a manner to set off the trap. Otherwise, she would have been injured, or worse, killed by a gunshot. The threats to her life, once written on pieces of paper, were now as real as they could possibly get.
Hello?
Mary sought the help of the police, and the gun was sent to the crime lab to determine its distress serial number. The result was as shocking as the threats Mary had received. The gun belonged to Paul Freshour, her ex-brother-in-law. But of course, he had an explanation. He said, "I admitted the gun was mine, but I hadn't seen it for a long time. I had no reason to check up on it or anything, and I don't know when it had come up missing. I really don't know what happened to it," and I told them that, and that's the truth.
That was right there when I thought Paul did this. Okay? That's truly when I thought he did it, until it was realized that he ends up in prison, and it just gets stranger.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, 100% stranger. So,
And at that time, Paul and his wife were going through a very contentious divorce. So the wife or the son, who was closer to the wife, would have had every reason to set him up.
yes, sir. That makes perfect sense, too. Perfect sense.
Paul's estranged wife, Karen, however, shared her suspicion with Mary that Paul might have been behind the threatening letters, calls, and signs all along. After Mary had told Sheriff Radcliffe about this, the latter summoned Paul to take a handwriting test on February 25th, either to confirm or rule out Paul as the possible Circleville letter writer. Paul was asked to copy some of the anonymous letters sent to the residents, and Radcliffe was satisfied that Paul's handwriting was close enough to the mysterious writers. So Radcliffe then arrested Paul and charged him with the attempted murder of Mary and a $50,000 cash bond. Just like that, the unseen figure terrorizing Circleville finally had a face and a name: Paul Freshour. But was he really the one? Prosecutors proved that Paul was guilty in a trial that started on October 24, 1983. He was charged for the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie, but not for writing the threatening Circleville letters, though they were used as key evidence against him. Handwriting expert Stephen Green took the stand and testified that it was Paul's handwriting on the envelopes, letters, and the sign with the booby trap. The evidence was disputed, though, for the incorrect manner in which the handwriting test had been conducted. Paul's boss confirmed that Paul was absent on the day the booby trap was found. Mary, too, told the jury that she started to believe Paul was the letter writer after Karen had shared her own suspicions with her. Paul never took the witness stand, which he regretted years later, saying, "I can't blame the jury because the jury didn't hear all the evidence, but I just couldn't believe it. I was really in shock." He was convicted of the attempted murder of Mary and sentenced to 7 to 25 years in prison. Many were convinced Paul was guilty even before the verdict had been handed down. So, could the small town's residents finally heave a collective sigh of relief? Unfortunately, despite Paul being thrown behind prison bars, the writer of the vicious letters didn't put down their pen. The letters, postmarked in Columbus, were delivered throughout a large swath of central Ohio, which puzzled many people. How could Paul Freshour, who was locked up in jail in Lima, Ohio, do that? One of the letters...
It's pronounced Lima, not Lima. I can't stand when they do that. Anyway.
Letters alleged that Roger Klein, the prosecutor who handled the case, impregnated a school teacher and later killed her. The writer promised to dig up the corpse and mail the bones to the police if they didn't investigate Klein's role in the teacher's murder. The jail warden placed Paul in solitary confinement upon the request of the county sheriff's office, yet the letters kept coming. Unbelievably, at one point, Paul himself received a letter. It said, "Now when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all?" This convinced the
Now that there in itself, the fact that this man received his own letter, that was where I said, okay, it ain't him. I questioned it when I went through all this stuff, but that's enough right there for me to know. The guy's in solitary confinement. He had no access to any kind of letter writing stuff, envelopes, papers, pens. They didn't give him anything, nothing, purposely, so he couldn't do this kind of stuff. And he's being watched 24 hours a day by the guards. Wasn't him. Couldn't have been him. And there's no way that he didn't have access to the outside world. Like nobody, you couldn't talk to anybody or anything like that, have somebody do it. And see, the thing that pissed me off with the whole handwriting thing, I could have wrote it and I would have looked like I did it, guys. Arctic could have done it. Mama Bear, Doodle, anybody, because it's block writing. Anybody can do that. You know what I'm saying? I know that there's ways to tell if somebody specific wrote it, but it's so difficult to prove that because it is block handwriting. That's all. So Heather said, "Listen, are we sure that this isn't one of those creepy people that live in the walls?" I don't know. There's no answers yet, Heather. Who knows? Yes, Leslie, please, if you're at the hospital, stay away from as many people as you can. You don't want to end up getting any of that crazy stuff yourself.
The warden that Paul wasn't the mysterious writer. After 7 years of displaying good behavior inside jail, Paul was eligible for parole. However, this was rejected by the parole board due to the volume of letters that people were still receiving. 4 years later, Paul was paroled. In the whole 10 years that he was incarcerated and even after his parole in 1994, Paul maintained his innocence. Oddly, the anonymous letters stopped in 1994 as well. Theories about the real identity of the notorious writer centered around David Longberry, Mary's co-worker, whose advances she rejected. Many think that it's not far-fetched that he retaliated by writing the first anonymous letters that exposed Mary and Gordon's affair. Karen, Paul's ex-wife, also became the subject of speculation. Described as a very angry and manipulative woman, some believe that she planted the booby trap, used Paul's typewriter to write a few letters, and raised suspicions about Paul to Mary. Perhaps it was all a setup.
Sorry to bug you guys, but you're all so smart. What kind of digital thermometer, you mean, for kids should I get? Because if they send her home on oxygen, Ashley, her mom is 4 degrees off. As long as it, go ahead.
Use the forehead or the ear one from Walmart. It's only I think it's $13, but it works.
Yeah, the forehead ones work the best, and that way you don't have to change those plastic caps and everything. You just point it at their forehead and you get a temperature.
Yeah, I agree with that one with the forehead thing. I have the ear one, and I have one that a digital one you can put under your tongue still, but I don't wholeheartedly trust those because kids don't keep them in their mouths very well. So, that's probably your best bet. The forehead thing that scans your forehead is probably and that's what most hospitals use now as well in doctor's offices. That'd be your best bet. And I think I saw the forehead one. You said $13, Doodle?
Yeah, at Walmart where I got mine.
That's not bad then. Hell, I paid $25 for the ear one. So SRB says Exergen is the name brand for the one. So there you go. Or Exergen, Exorgen, whatever it is. Either way, you'll figure out the writing on it. It's close to that. We'll just put it that way. Thank you, SRB. And it wasn't bugging anybody, Leslie. It's a valid question. I understand completely.
To frame Paul after their bitter divorce, but had awarded Paul their house and custody of their kids. Though plausible, these theories were never pursued. The Circleville letters mystery is yet to be irrefutably solved and is still mainly associated with Paul Freshour, who died at the age of 70 in 2012. So that's it for this week's episode of Every Town. Tune in next week for another episode filled with scary stories.
All right, so there's that one, guys. Like I said, the whole story, there's a lot more to it than that within the city itself.
Now, Diego, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be thinking of a different case because I cover so many of them, but wasn't El Camino similar to the Sun's scene near where that booby trap was planted at some point?
That was my understanding in the actual article itself I read. It was like a story. It wasn't a video. Yeah, there was. I think you're right. I'm pretty sure you're right. It might be in this next thing we're going to go through here. And that in a sense explains why people would think that the Sun could have been involved per se. So it's a good question, dude. Good question. I'm trying to remember for a fact because I read 3 or 4 articles, not just to mention the videos that were covered. I'm trying to think of which one I wanted to show you guys next on this because some of this stuff you're going to see again, like I always say, but there's going to be some other things that are thrown in here too. One moment here. Critical says, ask yourself this: why would he plant the booby trap in a wide open area where he could be seen? Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure he did it where at night, things like that when he wasn't seen. But then again, it's weird because in that situation, you would do that. Wouldn't you have to do that after the mail ran so that you were getting your target? Welcome back, Brandy. Instead of maybe the mailman or somebody that could have been affected by that. So I would think that, yeah, maybe it was done I don't know. That's a good question, Critical. Seriously. The scary thing is what if the little girl would have been the one that, you know what I mean? That's very scary. That's it right there. I don't believe he was writing the letters from prison, Rowena. That's why everybody thinks, and that's the warden believed that he didn't do it either. No worries, Leslie. That's what it's all about, dear. We appreciate and love you very well, too. Very much as well, too. Sorry. I can't just talk today. I don't know, Paula. I don't know about the mailman, but either way, it's a mess. All right, guys. On to this next scenario here.
In-depth.
All right, here we go.
Terrorizing letters spread across a town like wildfire. Who was the mysterious letter writer? In 1976, in the small town of Circleville, Ohio, creepy letters started making their way into the townspeople's mailboxes.
Like I said, you guys are going to get the story like you've gotten it already, probably, but there's added things to these. So bear with it, please, and thank you.
These letters were exposing secrets within this small town and contained personal details of each individual. Was it one person or a group of people sending out these letters? It is still unknown who the Circleville writer is. There was no return address on the marked letters, only that it was from Columbus, Ohio. Perhaps that's a clue? Thousands of letters were received by politicians, leaders, and ordinary folks in town as well. Many of these letters contained sexual-oriented accusations, and some very disturbing. This story starts off with Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver. She first received a letter in cryptic, handwritten block lettering. The letter writer accused her of a love affair with the superintendent, Gordon Massey.
Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about knowing him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house, and I know you have children. This is no joke. Please, take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified and everything will be over soon.
Both denied any involvement together, as they were both married at the time. Mary swore to her husband, Ron, that these allegations were false. 2 weeks had passed, and Ron had received a similar letter stating,
You have had 2 weeks and done nothing. You are a pig offender. You're also a pig. Make her admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBS. Posters, signs, billboards, until the truth comes out. Only pigs ride motorcycles. Good hunting in your red and white truck on your way to work. Remember, she hung in his office constantly until she broke up his marriage and home. Contact people at school. They're aware. They're starting to laugh, not only at her. Let her read this. It is no lie. He knows I'm telling no lie. I followed him for weeks since last summer, and have seen her meet him several times. He knew if caught, there would be trouble.
Thank you so much, Leslie and Billy. That's so amazing of you and very generous, gifting 5 memberships. Mama Bear, can you see who received them? It looks like CLK got one. Welcome, CLK Creations. Again, good to see you. I can't tell who else got them at this moment. Welcome to all the new meatballs that are in the sauce. Okay, I'll figure out eventually who it is. And thank you again, Leslie. That was so very generous. God bless.
if they did not comply, he threatened to release this information to CBS News, post it on billboards and posters all around town. Both Ron and Mary decided to keep these letters and alleged affair quiet and wait it out. For some time, the letters stopped. Perhaps the letter writer was busy with its other targets? The letter writer went as far as posting signs around town accusing Superintendent Gordon Massey of having sexual relations with the Gillespie's 12-year-old daughter. On August 19th, 1977, something dramatic occurred in the Gillespie home. Someone had called the household that day. Ron answered and suddenly left the house in a flurry, angry. It is believed that the phone call was from the letter writer, and Ron left to confront him. Unfortunately, a tragic event occurs. Ron never made it to the letter writer, and he wouldn't make it back home either. For his truck would strike a tree and he would die on the scene. This may seem like an accident, but something seems off. He had his gun on his body at the time of the crash. Police say that his gun was fired at some time before the crash.
That's what I forgot to ask you, Arctic. Do you have any thoughts on the fact that there was one bullet fired from this gun and that they couldn't find it anywhere?
Yeah, that's definitely suspect. I mean, if he had the gun with him and it's nowhere to be found after the wreck, that means someone else was at that scene.
That was my thought. Definitely my thought. Well, like I said, this crash, they're saying that the stupid sheriff, I have no respect for this man, tried to say that first it was which is what I believe the initial situation was labeled as when it said there was foul play, and then turned around and flipped it and tried to say it was all due to a DUI, which the DUI could have had involvement, but also this is the man that doesn't drink either. So there's some weird things with this whole crash thing that I'm just not comfortable with at all. And I agree with what Arctic just said. That makes some sense there. Okay. This is just wild to me. This whole thing, the whole crash with that's basically what we were covering was Ron Gillespie's death, but the Circleville thing envelops the whole thing. So that's why, but still. No, Taylor, you're still white, hon. I'm sorry.
And sometime after leaving his home. Even stranger, the bullet was never found. So who did he fire his gun at? And where did he fire his gun? This death goes to show that this letter writer is capable of murder. Even with the strange inconsistencies of the crash, the sheriff ruled it out as an accident. He had first agreed there was indeed foul play. Then when confronted again, he changed his mind. Many townsfolk believed that this was a cover-up. This seemed to upset the letter writer. He or she wanted the town to know that this wasn't an accident. After her husband's death, the letters continued. Mary had begun a relationship with, you guessed it, Gordon Massey, and decided to be public about it. Things in the town had started changing, but the letters continued, and the letter writer continued to prove what he or she was capable of. On February 7th, 1983, while driving down her bus route, Mary had seen a sign posted to a pole that threatened her daughter's life. As she tore the sign down, she noticed an odd booby trap that contained a loaded gun to fire once the sign was removed. Luckily, the booby trap malfunctioned and Mary was safe. The police linked the gun to Paul Freshour, Mary's brother-in-law. Paul pleaded that the gun was lost years ago and that he was indeed innocent. After a letter writing test, police believed he was in fact the letter writer. Paul was convicted to 7 to 25 years in prison for the attempt of murder of Mary. The story doesn't stop there. Paul received a letter from the Circleville writer while in prison. The letter wrote,
Now when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke's on you. Tell no one of this letter. Saw the paper. Great news. Great. Sheriff loved it. Do you believe it now? Do you?
This assured Paul that he would never be released from prison. Perhaps he knew the letter writer. and the letter writer threw him under the bus? The most interesting part to this story is that while Paul was in prison, the letters continued. The police even went as far as to admit Paul to solitary confinement for a time and restrict his writing materials to see if the letters would stop. The letters continued on, baffling investigators. The letters continued to pour in, and they were sickening, and they contained some very serious accusations. In one, the writer had accused Roger Klein, the prosecutor in Paul's case, of having gotten a school teacher pregnant and then killing her. The writer went as far as to threaten to dig up the body and mail the remains to police if he didn't admit to it. Another chilling letter called out Dr. Ray Carroll, the local coroner. The writer accused him of being a pedophile, and in fact, he was. The state medical board issued 12 counts of gross immortality, sex crimes involving minors, corruption of a minor, pornography, obscenity, and indecent exposure. Another insane person living in Circleville, Ohio, was David Longberry. He is another possible suspect of being the Circleville letter writer. In 1999, he had raped an 11-year-old girl and was never caught. He is still on the run to this day. In May of 1994, Paul was granted parole and was released after spending 10 years in prison. After his release, he started a website proclaiming his innocence and accusing Sheriff Radcliffe of covering up the crimes. Was Paul an innocent victim of the letter writer, or was he involved somehow? Theories. Some people believe that Mary Gillespie and Gordon Massey were responsible for the Circleville letters, perhaps to kill her husband and be together? Was Sheriff Radcliffe in on it and helped them cover it up? Perhaps they had dirt on him and blackmailed him into helping them? Others believe the letters were written and distributed by a group of individuals in town. One suspect was Ron's sister. One other clue was a mysterious man in a yellow Camaro seen parked by the booby trap sometime before Mary had ripped the sign off. Unfortunately, nothing has been confirmed.
I think that's what you were talking about, Arctic.
I'm sorry.
Was that what you were talking about the yellow Camaro?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they said that they never could put anything together with that just now. So, but still, it does make some sense. Where'd you go, Doodle?
She had to drop down. Apparently, Barb hit a deer last night on her way home and needs $500 for her deductible. So they're going to try to get her a loan.
Okay. Sounds good. Let her know we're thinking about her, and we'll talk to you soon. Good Lord, I hope she's okay. She's okay, just a mental mess. Please not. No, of course not. Oops. Okay. On we go.
Thanks for listening. If you're into solved and unsolved crimes and strange mysteries, subscribe to us so you don't miss out on our weekly videos.
Okay, so there goes that one there. There's not a whole lot of news coverage on this either that I could find, which was strange to me. You'd think such a big deal would have made the news back in the day or whatever, but nothing. Hold on here. 1 second.
Where did everybody go?
I'm here.
I'm here. I'm trying to set this next thing up.
Oh, I came back from my phone call and it's just quiet. I'm like,
Doodle had to drop down to go help with a situation, but we're
yeah,
still
I
here.
heard that.
Okay. All right, one moment, guys. This one's giving me some problems, but I'm getting it loaded in. One moment, guys. I was just struggling to get this loaded in. We're here still.
How you do, girl?
Okay, so this next scenario is called Who Most Likely Wrote the Disturbing Circleville Letters? Now, again, I have my thoughts. Arctic threw his out there. Hey, Doe Girl, thank you for joining us. We'll see what you guys come up with, too, after hearing the things you've heard. Let's see what this has to say to us today.
Circleville is your typical small town. It's quiet, peaceful, and low-key. Located halfway between Columbus and Chillicothe, the most famous thing that the town is known for is its annual Pumpkin Festival. That is until the late 1970s, when poison pen letters started circulating in the community. It sounds like one of Agatha Christie's novels, The Moving Finger, where people in the village started receiving poison pen letters. Just like the story, the Circleville letters were full of accusations, claiming to know the deepest, darkest secrets of the residents that they didn't want anyone to know. For the most part, the letters were about the private sex lives of the recipients, though there were some that hinted at murder and false imprisonment. The letter writer threatened to reveal these secrets to the public if the recipients didn't stop what they were doing. It wasn't long before residents of the once peaceful, close-knit community started feeling wary around each other. A web of suspicion and fear surrounded the town. After all, who would know their secrets if it wasn't someone close to them? It is estimated that more than 1,000 letters were sent by the writer. Some were sent to ordinary citizens, others were sent to public officials and newspapers. All of them were postmarked Columbus, Ohio. Some had no return address, while others had a fake one. All the letters were written in distinctive block letters. No one knew who was sending the letters, and no one could predict when such a letter would suddenly appear in their mailbox. Who would have thought that these menacing letters would eventually lead to the destruction of a family?
Welcome, Bill.
Join us as we take a deeper look into the Circleville letters and the mystery surrounding them to find out what most likely happened. The anonymous poison pen letters started arriving in 1976. Many of the recipients didn't disclose the contents of the letters they received, if they even admitted to receiving one. In addition, it was impossible to prove that all of the allegations in the Circleville letters were true. But it was reported that some of the letters contained truths known at the time to be true. Other allegations were only proven to be true years later. And then there were some accusations that were later debunked. Though it has never been revealed who was the resident to receive the first letter, there was one resident who seemed to have been targeted the most: Mary Gillespie. Mary was a local bus driver for the school district in Circleville. She was married and had 2 children. One day, she received an anonymous letter that told her to stop her affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The letter also told her that the writer had been observing her house and was aware that she had children. Initially, Mary just kept the letters hidden away. She didn't tell anyone of their existence. Instead, she merely began to keep an eye on her surroundings. However, because of her inaction, the writer decided to send a letter to her husband, Ron. His letter exposed Mary's alleged affair with Gordon Massey. The writer even goaded Ron, stating, "You should catch them together and kill them both. He doesn't deserve to live." The author didn't stop there. In another letter to Ron, he said, "Gillespie, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBS, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out." Mary had assured Ron that the allegation was false. However, ignoring the letters seemed to make things worse for the Gillespies. Instead of stopping, the writer became even more threatening. The writer also started sending letters to the school's vice principal, informing him about the alleged affair. "I shall send you proof about driver number 62917. She has a child in school there now. I shall prove this shortly. I expect him to be discharged. You'll see that I am telling the truth." While the writer didn't send any proof after mailing the letter, the fact that he knew Mary's driver number meant that he was somehow connected to the school.
You know, I had to wonder if the superintendent was married, if maybe his wife could have been the one that did something like that, maybe at that point at least, you know. That was another theory too, but I don't know. If he's not married though, that wouldn't fit. So Phil, you're a trip. Trying to mess with you, Mama Bear. Uh-oh.
Yeah, the only reason why I don't think it would be the superintendent's wife is I doubt that she would target a little girl like that.
Yeah, that's the one thing that agreed. It's funny you said that. I was sitting here thinking like, well, maybe, but then there's the child, and just as you were saying that, my brain was telling me, no, dude, that's not it. So be it. These things just make me start thinking about a lot of crazy things.
Oh, believe me, my mind goes 1,000 places when we start looking at it.
Yeah, there's so much to, especially with everybody else in the town that got other letters about different things, and to be, that's the thing that bugs me about this, guys, is to be able to know. We know that this one family was hit the hardest. We'll just say that, okay? But then there's other people out there that got letters about things too, and a lot of political aspects to them, higher ups in the community, things like that. Personal things too, and there was a lot of sexual overtones to some of these things, and it's like, how do you know these things? Who are you that you know that much about so many people? You know what I mean? And then I'm thinking like maybe a doctor. No, I don't know, but there's, like I said, like he said, your mind goes 75 different directions, so it's interesting though.
At this point, even Gordon Massey was receiving poison pen letters. In his case, the threats involved slashing his tires and cutting his brakes if he didn't stop seeing Mary. Because of these threats, Ron and Mary decided to tell their family about the letters.
See, and that's why I went to the wife, because it's threatening you. Stop seeing her now, or this will happen to you. And anybody that would say that would even care that much to say something like that, you would think would be close to either one of those two people, whether it be Ron, who but he passed away because of a car accident. So, and he went after this person who he thought it was, the David Longberry. So that doesn't make any sense either. So it's so weird, you know. And Heather, right, I get it. Creepy people that live in the walls. I know what you're saying, Heather. I know what you're saying.
They told Ron's sister Karen and her husband Paul Freshour about them. Paul worked at the local Anheuser-Busch plant, but he used to be a prison guard. He even survived a 30-hour ordeal as a hostage at the Ohio State Penitentiary years ago when the inmates briefly took over the prison. When the couple confided in the Freshours, Mary already had a suspect in mind, fellow bus driver David Longberry. He had once made a pass at her, but she rejected him. Mary thought that it was possible Longberry was taunting her because he was jilted. The two couples thought of a plan. Paul would write a letter to Longberry.
That's a good point, Nancy. Somebody that's reading mail that works for the postal service in the local town. Yeah, that would make some sense because then you'd know a little bit everything, you know? It's a good point.
Telling him that they knew he was the writer and that he should stop immediately. And the letters did stop, but only for a little while. It wasn't long before signs began appearing all over town. The sign stated that Gordon Massey was in a relationship with the Gillespie's 12-year-old daughter, Tracy. This enraged Ron, who started driving around town early in the morning before work to tear off the signs before his daughter could see them. They took the letters to the sheriff's office, who consequently conducted an investigation. It was reported that they watched houses and even tapped phones. They even tried to work with the USPS to find out where the letters were coming from, but the harassment didn't stop. On August 19, 1977, Ron received a phone call at home. According to reports, the caller told Ron that he had been watching their house for some time. After the call, Ron stormed out of his house with a .22 caliber revolver in hand. He told his daughter that he knew the identity of the Circleville letter writer, and he was to make him stop. Ron's truck was found later that night at 10:35 p.m. It had crashed into a tree. Ron was inside the truck, dead from major internal injuries. Authorities found that his gun had been fired, but they never found any bullet casing at the scene. More importantly, they discovered that Ron had a blood alcohol content of 0.16, which was twice the legal limit.
That's a good theory too, CZ. It'd be a dark person to do that and still wear a collar, but CZ says, I'm lurking while on my planning time. The only other thing I can think of is a priest, and priests usually know so much because of confessions, but why on earth would a priest use the info for these letters? That's a good answer. Now, that's if these are Catholic people that go to that type of a confessional type scenario, because not everybody does do that, and not every person is in that type of a church. So but it's a hell of a theory, though. And that person, again, would have to be very dark, and to still wear a priest collar and be that person is scary as hell to me. So, good point. Yeah, there are plenty of creepy priests. I do agree with that one. Very good point, CZ. Please stay healthy. I forgot CZ teaches too. Stay healthy, please.
Though friends and family claimed that Ron was not a heavy drinker, the police concluded that Ron's death was a drunk driving accident.
I mean, it could be, Heather. That's a good point too. But who is that person that knows all these people's personal and specific things in their lives? You know, and to me, this tells me at some point that Mary and this guy probably were having that relationship, okay? Because they ended up together after the fact. So there is that as well. So there's some point to this that's true. She would know if she had confessed. Yeah, that's very good. That's a good point. Unless Massey had confessed. Very cool. Children's therapists get to hear all the stuff happening behind closed doors. Another good point there too. And Doe Girl says, you can send, I love your avatar. You can send a letter to yourself to make it look like someone else sent it. That's another thought that I had too, is was somebody sending this within the home itself, possibly, and to make it, did Ron possibly do this? But then after Ron passed away, the letters kept going. So at the beginning, I thought maybe Ron did this, to kind of scare his wife into stopping the affair, maybe. You know what I mean? But then this happened here with this truck and all that. No, that took that thought out of my head. But still,
I'll tell you this: no one knows more about everyone's secrets in the town than the beauty shop operator that gets to listen to all the gossip in and out all day long.
yes, that is a fact too. That is a fact. People lurk all the time, like they do in here, gathering info. And that's very true. Critical, very true. And back then in the day, before we had all this, word of mouth, people gossip so much. You get little pieces and bits and pieces of information, and shit, what Arctic just said actually might make some sense. You got Mary and Gertrude and Dorothy sitting at the beauty shop, and they're all talking shit about everybody in town. Eventually, it's going to get around to somebody else. That could have just been what started it right there. You never know. Sorry if I used any names that offended anybody. I was just trying to think of quick names. And massive amounts of students and teachers sick last week, and today I'm walking around with a baby wipe in my 100%. Absolutely, CZ. Too many people being sick, so just be safe and healthy. That's all. That's what I said. Puppet master, hoaxer, pre-internet. Right. Good point, Heather. Good point.
Paul kept pushing the police to take a closer look. He believed that Ron had been murdered. He also believed that Ron had tried to shoot the... The police concluded...
Hold on, I want to back up to that point, make sure we didn't miss...
that Ron's death was a drunk driving accident. Paul kept pushing the police to take a closer look. He believed...
And don't forget, you guys, the police initially said there was foul play involved in that accident, and then stopped, flipped it, and said it was all due to his drunk driving. And this is the guy that ended up going to prison for doing this. Paul is the one that was pushing the police to look into this more, to about the foul play side of it. So that this whole thing is strange, the way this all mixes together. Very weird. Amethyst Nor, welcome. Good to see you, dear. Yeah, it's true too. The janitor at the school knows everything in a small town. 100%. You are absolutely right, Amethyst. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you. It's been a while. It's wonderful to see you here. Maybe another teacher. Good points, you guys. Very good points.
Believed that Ron had been murdered. He also believed that Ron had tried to shoot the writer. Unfortunately, the sheriff's office didn't think of investigating when and where Ron shot his gun. The department believed that this information was irrelevant to the incident. In addition, the sheriff...
Good afternoon, Mother. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're feeling good and being safe out there when you leave the house. It's good to see you, and I miss you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Ruth.
This is my mother, everybody. Ruth Gosnell. That's Miss Mama Dago, as everybody calls her.
told Paul that they did have one suspect before. But after that individual passed a polygraph test, they didn't pursue this line of inquiry anymore. At the time of Ron's death, Mary was in Florida with her sister. She was on vacation, trying to relieve all the stress caused by the poison pen letters. After Ron's death, Mary continued to receive letters. This time, the writer was taunting her and Gordon. Everyone knows what you have done. If you don't believe us, just make them mad and find out for yourself. Aside from continuing to send letters to Mary, the writer suddenly started sending letters to other residents of Circleville. This time, he was claiming that the sheriff had covered up the true cause of Ron's death.
So, it again, guys, thinking about this, everything started with this family, and then it started to kind of flow out into the rest of the town, so on and so forth. But this was like the main situation that received most attention, from my understanding. By the way, Mom, I don't know if you remember this, the Circleville letters from Circleville, Ohio, cold case that's out there is what we're talking about today. I'm sure I don't know how much news this got back in the day. There's nothing I can find on it now, but just to give you a heads up, Mom, as to what we're talking about. Excuse me.
According to him, Ron was murdered by Mary and her lover, Gordon Massey. In 1979, just 2 years after Ron's death, Gordon Massey got a divorce and started dating Mary Gillespie. Needless to say, this raised questions as to whether she really did have an affair with Massey. However, Mary denied these allegations. According to her, she and Massey had started their relationship only after Ron's death. Maybe it was because Mary and Massey's relationship was now in the open that the attacks against her became more extreme. On February 7th, 1983, years after Ron's death, Mary was driving her bus when she saw a sign on a nearby fence that was targeting her daughter. She stopped and went to pull down the sign. However, when she tried to take it down, she discovered that it was booby-trapped. A gun was set to fire once the sign was taken down. When the authorities tried to trace the owner of the gun, they found that the serial number had been filed off. Fortunately, they were still able to find enough information to identify the owner. It turned out to be Paul Freshour, the brother-in-law. The discovery stunned the authorities and...
So this could also be, too, Arctic, if you think about it, somebody that hated Paul and wanted to, well, I think you said this already, wanted to frame him for this, obviously, and set it up like that so that, you know, especially if that gun would have went off and did what it was meant to do, that would have been murder.
Yep.
Period. You know what I mean? And that would have been a pretty heavy charge for somebody to get a hell of a lot more than 7 to 25 years, but still, yeah, that makes some sense to me too. But to be able to do that whole thing with the gun and all that, that's pretty wild, guys. I mean, to think of that is nuts. So again,
Well, it wasn't a professional job, whoever did it, because it was very crudely put together, which is why it didn't go off when she found it. So I'm guessing it was someone very amateur. Like I said, Paul's wife, Paul's son, someone that was familiar with them, someone that was trying to set him up possibly. That's where my mind always goes back to. I mean, it's the thing that
Especially
makes the most sense to me.
with the divorce situation he was going through too, that makes some sense. It really does. You know, what did this guy do to piss these people off so bad to make this his wife and maybe his kid possibly within a divorce situation? Who knows? But yeah, he was a corrections officer at Mansfield Reformatory at one point in time. So there's that too. You know, there's that too. Who knows? An inmate, maybe a former inmate there. I don't know. There's a lot of different questions with this and possible answers, but it's still to involve the rest of the town is what got me kind of like, wait a minute. You know, if it was all centered on this one family and stayed there, that'd be different, but it didn't. It spread out throughout the town too. Thank you, SRB. I appreciate you very much for that.
Mary. Why would Paul do this? They couldn't think of any reason why he would threaten his in-laws. In fact, Mary was still friendly with Paul, even though he had already gotten a divorce with Ron's sister, Karen. She couldn't believe that Paul would attempt to kill her. Paul, of course, maintained his innocence. While out on bail, he even had himself checked into the mental health center of the Riverside Hospital for examination. The police continued to look for evidence. They found that Paul had purchased a gun from a co-worker. They also discovered that Paul had taken a day off from work on February 7th, the same day that Mary found the booby trap. Another piece of evidence that the police connected to Paul was the industrial-sized chalk box that held the gun. It was a type of box that Paul had easy access to in his workplace. More importantly, handwriting experts claimed that samples of Paul's handwriting were a match for 391 of the letters and 103 postcards sent to the Gillespies and other residents of Circleville. However, Paul claimed that the sheriff had asked him to try and copy samples of the poison pen letters, which is why the handwriting matched. What about the gun then? Paul readily admitted to owning the gun, but he claimed that it had been stolen weeks earlier. It's just that he did not report it. The police found no evidence to support his statement. More importantly, he failed a polygraph test. Based on these pieces of evidence, Paul was indicted by a grand jury in March 1983 for attempted murder. His trial took place in October of the same year. Karen testified that Paul had written the Circleville letters. She even provided evidence, letters she found hidden in their house. As for motive, Karen claimed that Paul hated Mary. He thought the world of Ron and began to hate Mary after Ron's death due to her affair with Massey. It only took a week before he was convicted and given the maximum sentence, 7 to...
Thank you so much, Bill. I can't tell who received it right now, but thank you for that gifted membership. God bless. You are appreciated, Phil. So very generous. Thank you.
25 years in prison. The entire town of Circleville felt relieved. The nightmare was over. Unfortunately, the town's relief was short-lived. The residents continued to receive letters in their mailbox. Signs were also still appearing around town. The sheriff's office maintained that Paul was responsible, though he couldn't explain how Paul had sent out those letters. But the prison warden disagreed. According to him, Paul was being monitored. They inspected all of his incoming and outgoing mail. He also had no access to pen and paper. They even started monitoring his calls just to see if he had an accomplice. At some point, Paul was even placed in isolation to prevent any communication with the outside world. But the letters kept coming and the signs kept appearing. Paul himself got a letter from the anonymous writer. "Now, when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago, when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all?" In 1993, the case of the Circleville letters was investigated by the show Unsolved Mysteries. Before the episode was even aired, the producers received a letter of their own. "Forget Circleville, Ohio. If you come to Ohio, UL sickos will pay." In 1994, Paul was let out of prison on parole. Coincidentally, the letters also stopped coming in the same year. Paul died in 2012. He went to his grave still fighting to prove his innocence. Before we get into the theories, we need to clarify one thing first. Paul was only convicted of attempted murder, but it was never established that he was the writer of the Circleville letters. Moreover, it is not certain that the person who made the booby trap and the writer are one and the same person. With that in mind, we'll take a look at the theories of who set up the booby trap. Paul was convicted of the crime, but the evidence was insufficient. He had an alibi for the time when the trap was set. There were witnesses who saw him inside his home. He took the day off to have work done on his house. There was also no fingerprints on the box. More importantly, he didn't have a strong motive to kill Mary. According to Karen, Paul hated Mary for what happened to Ron. But it doesn't make sense that the brother-in-law would be so passionate about it when the sister didn't seem to bear the same hate. Moreover, Paul was often described as a loving family man. It seems unlikely that he would write something incredibly embarrassing and inappropriate about his niece and post it in public just to kill his brother-in-law's wife. In fact, Paul was so adamant about his innocence that he willingly cooperated with the show 48 Hours when they investigated the case. He even approached the FBI to ask for their help after he was released. Not only that, a former FBI profiler, Mary Ellen O'Toole, analyzed the Circleville letters in 2021. According to her, the culprit had a controlling, vindictive personality. She also stated that, based on the word choices and the grammar, the writer was not a highly educated person. It was also possible that the writer was a female. More importantly, he didn't think that the writer would risk exposure by setting up a booby trap in a public place. Paul was a manager at Anheuser-Busch. He also possessed a master's degree. It's unlikely that a smart person like Paul would set up a booby trap that could easily be linked to him. And according to his friends and family, he did not have a dark side. He wasn't callous or bitter. One detail that came out in the early 1990s was that another bus driver had driven past the same spot where the booby trap was located 20 minutes before Mary found it. According to her, there was a man standing beside an El Camino. He was a large man with sandy hair, a description that didn't match Paul at all. He was not large, and he had very dark hair. But if the maker of the booby trap wasn't Paul, who could it be? Some people believed that it was David Longberry who was Mary's initial suspect. He did have a motive for hating Mary, and he was guilty of raping an 11-year-old girl in 1999. With this kind of temperament, it's not difficult to imagine that he had written the ugly words targeting Mary's daughter. Another suspect is William Massey. He was Gordon Massey's son, and he could have been aware of his father's affair long before his parents' divorce. Some of the Circleville letters were reported to have been signed with a W. Moreover, he had a motive for targeting Mary. Other people believe that it was Karen who used the booby trap to frame Paul. She was bitter because she lost everything after the divorce. With Paul in jail, she would gain custody of everything. Moreover, some residents reported that Karen was dating a man who fit the description of the person who was seen near the booby trap. Karen's brother was also reported to have owned an El Camino. Last but definitely not the least is Paul's son, Mark. According to private investigator Martin Yant, Paul suspected that his gun was taken by his son. And this was known to one of Paul's friends before the booby trap was found. Paul just didn't want people to know about it, so he said that it was stolen. In 2002, Mark killed himself due to depression. Based on the evidence we've collected, we definitely believe that the Circleville writer and the maker of the booby trap wasn't Paul. The most likely suspect for the booby trap is Karen and her boyfriend at the time. Aside from the fact that she had the strongest motive, she suddenly testified that Paul was the writer. Why did she never mention this fact before the divorce? She could have gotten the gun from Mark, which had affected his mental health, causing him to suffer from depression for years. But what about the identity of the Circleville letter writer? Based on the content of the letters, we can assume that the writer is someone local. Aside from knowing about Mary's affair, some of the secrets he exposed couldn't have been known by people outside of Circleville. The prosecutor of the trial, Roger Klein, was one of the targets of the writer. He was accused of killing a pregnant woman. The coroner who performed Ron Gillespie's autopsy was also a recipient of accusations. The writer claimed that he was a pedophile. It was discovered that there was some truth in these claims. Klein was discovered to have had an affair with the dead woman, and he was the father of her unborn child. As to whether he did murder her, it's a question that has yet to be answered. As for the coroner, Carroll, he was officially charged with 12 counts of gross immorality, sex crimes, corruption of a minor, pornography, obscenity, and indecent exposure in 1993. Looking at the secrets that came out, it is unlikely that only one person was sending the letters out. How could one person know so many hidden truths? What most likely happened is that one person started writing poison pen letters to a few residents. Once it became known to others, other people started writing them as well, targeting people they had problems with, but couldn't openly scold. As for who targeted Mary Gillespie, our vote goes to William Massey, Gordon's son. Mary's letters were the most vicious, indicating that the writer was truly angry and wanted her to stop. Of course, these are just our thoughts. Who do you think is the writer of the Circleville letters? If you love our content and want to support the channel,
Okay, so that will do it for that part of all that there. 1 second here. Hold on, everybody. 48 Hours did do a full episode on this, of course. And I haven't been able to find any kind of updates as to any kind of an investigation. Now, I don't know if when everything stopped, if they stopped looking into it, whatever. I imagine they probably did. But
Well, that, or like in so many other cases, they thought they had gotten the guy, Paul, and so they just decided, well, it's done. We're not going to investigate any further, and probably destroyed all the evidence by now.
yeah, I would imagine that's a good point. Very good point. So what does everybody think with this one? I thought this was wild. Welcome, Walt. Thank you for joining us, Walt. Yeah, it sounds to me like the town has some pretty well, which then again, everybody's town has these types of people in it. So, there's that. It's worse than Harper Valley PTA. There you go. Let me see. I don't think that there aren't any new updates. I've looked and looked and looked. Or any more additions to this? Nothing. So it stayed unsolved for all that time. And I would look for anybody that thought that they could solve it. There's not much. The Y files covered it too, of course. And that's really it. But that's the story, guys. That's the whole. I really was kind of looking into the Ron Gillespie's death and with the truck, so on and so forth. I feel like he was murdered. I don't think that was an accident. I think something happened there a little bit more. And then they're saying that the sheriff covered up something on that too, which is very possible. Who knows? This whole town is a bit of a mess, or it was back then. But that's the story, you guys. That is the story. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on it. Of course, you can leave what you guys think down in the comments. Of course, I always love reading those and your guys' thoughts too, or throw it in the chat here now, so on and so forth.
I just wonder if Paul and the sheriff had previously had any type of contentious relationship with each other.
It's very possible. Very possible. Yeah, because it seems like the sheriff didn't want to let that go. You know what I mean? Like he had a hard on for him, period. There's no two ways about it. So that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Hey, David. I'm okay. How are you?
Works or travels to Columbus, especially on a schedule that aligns with mail coming from Columbus. That's a good point too, Heather. Did he just say a guy had an affair with a dead woman? I didn't hear that, Mark. I don't think that's what he said. They heard I had to mute you. They heard something going on in your background. That's probably why they're asking.
Oh.
Sounds like your kids are wrestling again, maybe.
They're playing video game.
Oh, there you go. Let's see. It is definitely a wild town. I agree with that one, Doe Girl. Wild story too. I thought you guys would be interested in hearing in that one. Wait a minute. Hold on. And just so everybody knows, there were thousands, not hundreds, not a few, not 20, 50, thousands upon thousands of letters that were written and sent throughout the town to people. It's a lot of time and effort that somebody put into this. like I said, to put the signs up, to rig up the booby trap, to possibly do something that was done to Ron's truck or whatever could have caused this situation. I don't know. It's just somebody had a hard on. Now there is also the for this situation, but there is also the theory that was thrown out there towards the end that the target initially was the Gillespie family. And then other people started seeing this and maybe started writing other letters to different people throughout the town. That is a possibility too, but I don't believe that.
I don't know. I mean, it seems the Gillespies were targeted harder than anyone was.
That's why I think. I mean, it's possible. It is possible that somebody had it bad for them, and then the rest of the town people saw this happening and decided to start writing their own letters to other people. Maybe that's very possible, guys. But still, the Gillespies themselves, just the fact of what they went through, somebody threatening, saying that it's your daughter's time now to pay for what you've done. That's horrible. This is a child, 12 years old. They accused her of having a relationship with this Massey guy. And the theory that the William Massey, Gordon's son, could have had a part in this makes a lot of sense too, because if he knows his father's having an affair with this woman, kids get angry over that stuff when their families have trouble and they separate. That could have been a possibility. I don't know how old he was for sure, but still, I'm just saying that's another theory too. This case drives me nuts though. It one of them things that pulls on everything, and it's like, what about this? What about that? Could this be it? Could that be it? And there's no answer to it. That's the problem. So maybe they should have looked in to see who was buying. There you go. There you go. Who was buying? So that's a good idea, actually. Who bought a lot of stamps, you know? And then we got Miss Heather's theory about the people that live in the walls. I know she's probably joking, but still, you just never know, guys.
They wouldn't be sending that many letters a day with the cost of postage, I'll tell you that.
Not nowadays. Hell no. No. Let me see. Yeah, basically the letters were a form of blackmail for the whole town. They were blackmailing the whole town. These letters were to tell the truth about their lives and the secrets in their lives and what's, it didn't really get into a lot of the other letters that were sent out, but they were sent out to like I said, higher ups in the government in the town, and with political things involved with the town, and you better do this or this is what's going to happen, things like that. And it's just wild to me. Hold on a minute, guys. There's another. I wish I could show the 48 hours episode. That was pretty good. Okay, I did find that. I thought that I had it, but I couldn't find that video. So I do have some of the other letters that were sent out. I wanted to show you. That's what I was trying to look for a few minutes ago, and I was struggling with it. Here we go. And these are, one second here. This next piece it comes from Lorden Arts. I'll put the link out here for you guys to check it out if you want to. All right. Wish I had the access to find those. I was looking and I couldn't. But anyway, here we go.
But once again, that is just someone terrorizing people specifically with letters. Today's case is a whole lot different because you have the same type of thing where a town is essentially being terrorized, actually more than just the town of Circleville. These letters went to other areas as well. But you have one person who is nearly killed. You have another person who does die. And then you have a third person who might have gone to jail and is innocent. all as the result of the Circleville letters. So very interesting case. It was even covered by Unsolved Mysteries. And guess what? Even they got a letter of their own from.
Yeah, and that kind of floored me too, hearing that Unsolved Mysteries received a letter and that told him basically to stay the hell out of Circleville, or else per se, and called him some kind of weird name. But that's wild to me. Which again tells me like who somebody was really, really in this. You know what I mean? With their mindset was really offset with this. So
what is known as the Circleville Rider. So let's start with a screenshot. This is an article that was written in the Ohio Observer by Martin Yant, and he is kind of one of the foremost investigators on this case. He's been featured several times in articles that I've read through on this case. We're going to hit a couple of his theories. His theories tend to evolve, it seems like, as time goes on, but he is really dedicated and steeped in the information around this case. So as any investigation naturally progresses, I'm sure that is the natural thing to happen. Your theories might change as you get new information. But here, I wanted to show you this because of this picture in the upper left. This is the actual letter that was sent to Unsolved Mysteries. And you can see they even included the envelope here as well. And it says, "Forget Circleville, Ohio. Do nothing to hurt Sheriff Radcliffe. If you come to Ohio, you El Sickos will pay. The Circleville Rider." It's a little bit threatening, not quite a direct threat, but let's just take a look at some of the other. This is the type of block writing that is typically featured in these letters. However, it is important to note that one of the earlier letters doesn't really match this writing. As a matter of fact, I think it's significantly different. Here's one of the earlier letters that went to a woman named Mary Gillespie. We're going to talk a whole lot about her on today's episode as well. The script that is being written for the letters here is so different from this to this kind of block letter format. I don't know if it's the same person and they got nervous about being identified, so they decided to try to change up their writing. Maybe they're writing with their non-dominant hand or something along those lines. But the thing that really grabbed my eye in this early letter is you've got this variation going on between, see the A in stay away. We've got 3 A's that happen up here, and they are actually lowercase a's, but they've been increased in size to look like they're uppercase, essentially, just from the size of them. But down here, there are other A's that appear, like here in please, and that has been changed to what is like a normal uppercase A. It's curious to me to see that type of inconsistency within the same letter. So I think that might mean that the person is being conscious about trying to change their writing or the style of their writing. And then maybe as it goes on, they forget about those decisions. And all of a sudden they're going back to a regular uppercase A. I don't know. I've never quite seen that in the same letter like that before. But from that letter to these letters, I mean, the writing is substantially different. And some people might think perhaps there is more than one Circleville Rider. But let's learn a little bit more about Circleville really quickly. Jumping over to wikipedia.org, Circleville is a city in and the county seat of Pickaway County, Ohio. The population was 13,314 at the 2010 census. Now, these letters occurred starting in the mid-1970s. So if we just check out the historical population, we can see that it was about over 11,500 back then. Still a relatively smaller community. We can see it here kind of in the center of Ohio. Obviously known for the pumpkin show. I've seen people in threads talking about that in a few places as well. Even though these letters started in the mid-70s, they continued for quite a while, like 20 years. And there's a very interesting twist in the scope of those letters continuing, because the person that everyone thought was doing it was incarcerated for 10 of those 20 years. But we'll get to that aspect of the story in a little bit. Moving over to the lineup.com. This is a pretty good write-up. I've been noticing what I consider like the blog write-up of this story. It's a little simplistic. Some of the facts don't seem to line up if you do a deeper dive in that. So I'm going to include a couple of those in the sources below. I'll try to point out if there's anything wildly inconsistent. I don't think there is on this one, but let's just jump in and get started. In 1976, the citizens of Circleville, Ohio began receiving sinister handwritten letters. The anonymous author knew many personal details about each resident and claimed to be watching them. They were postmarked from nearby Columbus without a return address. Moving over to historicmysteries.com, let's learn some more. The letters contained threats of violence and personal information that in some cases only the recipient was aware of. Many of these letters were hatefully written with vulgarisms and lewd artwork. None of the Circleville letters had any return address, and all appeared to come from somewhere within Columbus. I have seen a few instances of examples that also they were postmarked within Circleville. So not quite all of them came from Columbus, but we're talking the vast majority, and we're talking a lot of letters to the tune.
You're muted, Jacob.
Stupid microphone.
Fix it.
I know. Well, I've been tried to actually the other day, and now I can't find the cord. I need a different cord to hook it in. So once I find that, it will be done. What did I say? Oh, the postmark thing here tells me that there's a possibility that does say that some of these letters could have been written within Italian too. You know what I mean? After the fact. So who knows?
Of more than 1,000 letters. Every single letter was written in the same distinct style, block letters, and might have been an attempt to cover up the author's personal handwriting. I already showed you some examples where it's not every letter is written in the same exact style. As a matter of fact, some of the letters were even typewritten. So just keep that in mind as we roll forward here. Even though many of the town's 14,000 inhabitants were targeted, one woman was seemingly singled out for some severe and or harsh treatment. Mary Gillespie drove a school bus for a living and was among the initial targets. In addition to revealing disturbing facts, such as her home being under surveillance by the author and that she was a married mother, the letter also contained an allegation that Gillespie was having an affair with a superintendent of schools. In no uncertain terms, the author demanded that she stop. Several additional letters were sent to her, all of a similar nature. At first, the terrified woman just hid them all away, until one of the Circleville letters arrived addressed to Ron Gillespie, Mary's husband. Of course, the letter wound up spilling the beans and telling Ron what his wife was up to with the superintendent. Ron was ordered to put an end to the affair or die. So we have a very direct threat here. From the stuff that I've read that was sent to Mary, she was not being threatened in quite that way. It was kind of speaking more about, I know about your children, kind of assuming that there were other ways that they would be able to harm her, but not a direct threat to her. Ron was the first one that appeared to get a very direct threat where you have to do something about this or something's going to happen to you. I know about where you work. I know that you have a red and white truck, et cetera, et cetera. Both Ron and Mary worked together to try and ignore the threats and intimidation and carry on. Another chilling letter quickly changed that. Gillespie, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBs, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out. You might see that it looks like it says CBS here. I've read several articles on this and seen some people even discussing the aspect. It's supposed to be CBs. I don't think that a person that's trying to remain anonymous has connections at CBS where they're going to, get this type of information broadcast. But now this article at Historic Mysteries, this next paragraph, some of this stuff is not true. So I'm actually going to read it and then tell you guys where it's incorrect, because I've seen it repeated so often, and I've seen other places that have better information where we know that this isn't how it happened. The couple began to deliberate about who the possible Circleville letter writer could be. Their suspicions centered on Ron's brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. No, it didn't. Not at this point. It absolutely did not. They actually invited Ron's sister and Paul, who was Ron's sister's husband, over to their home. They told them about the letters. They all thought that they knew who was writing the letters, and they decided to write that person some letters saying, hey, we know who you are, stop doing this. And it appeared that that worked for a brief period of time, that the letters did seem to stop for a very short period of time. So if you're reading up on this and you see this, that, that Ron and Mary basically thought that it was their brother-in-law right from the start, that is not accurate, and I have read plenty of information to support that that is not accurate. But let's move on. August 19th, 1977, the phone rang. Ron answered. Mary never did find out what was said or who made the call, but it was assumed to be the phantom author. Ron lost his temper, grabbed his pistol, and left the house. At an intersection close to where they lived, Ron's vehicle struck a tree and killed Ron Gillespie. When the police investigated the crash, they discovered that Ron's gun had been fired once. Detectives could find no reason or excuse for Ron to have fired at all, whether it was deliberate or not. The crash happened moments after Ron drove away, and no shot was reported. A postmortem examination recorded that Ron's blood alcohol level was 1.5 times the legal limit. I've seen it reported as it was at 0.16. I'm very curious about the shot that was supposedly fired, and I can't find very good detail on this. It seems like Ron got drunk, which apparently was strange for him. Several of his friends have noted this is not the type of guy that was a hard drinker or anything like that. Did the phone call upset him to the point where he felt like he had to get some liquid courage and go talk to someone about what was going on? Possibly. That someone that he was going to talk to, he felt like he needed to be armed for some reason. In the Unsolved Mysteries episode, there is kind of this assumption that it was definitely the Circleville writer that called him, and that he went and grabbed his gun, got in his truck, and went to go meet this person somewhere, even though the Circleville writer said that he was watching Ron's home at that time, which we're talking about 1977. You don't have cell phones. And if it's someone that lived close enough to be watching Ron's home or his vehicle, why would Ron have needed to get in his truck if he knew who this person was, to the point where he was going to go have a confrontation with this person and had to arm himself?
Mom. Thanks for joining us.
There's a lot about this that really doesn't make sense. Some people question if the investigation done by the local sheriff, the same sheriff that was mentioned at the beginning of this episode in the letter that I showed you that went to Unsolved Mysteries, did they really do a good job on this investigation? I'm not sure. But what we do have is his blood alcohol level is high. His car was wrecked into a tree. There was a gun with him, and one of the bullets had been fired. A consideration I don't see people really talk about is, what if that bullet was fired at a completely different time and he just didn't empty the empty cartridge out of the gun? What if he just left it in there because he knew he had several more shots and he just put it away in his drawer or whatever? There's nothing to necessarily assume that he took fresh ammo and just reloaded the gun right before he got into the truck. If I was going to have a face-off with someone, I probably would. I'd probably check and make sure that there was fresh ammo in the gun. But if you're drunk, are you going to necessarily think about that? I'm not sure. There's no mention of, they know that he shot the bullet because they found the bullet in a nearby tree, or they saw that it went through his window, or they saw that it accidentally fired in the accident because it was jostled or something like that. There is no information about that gunshot. Gunshot residue being on his hand, which I don't even think was really an investigative tool back then. Nothing. So it's really, really strange. When we boil this down, we have a woman who might or might not be having an affair, someone writing letters to her family talking about this affair, upsetting them so badly that the husband decides that he's going to go out and talk to someone about this, and he never makes it. He basically winds up driving his truck into...
They didn't check for GSR on people's hands back in the day in the 70s, 80s. That's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would have assumed that they did.
I did too. That seems, I don't know, I could be wrong, but whatever. Because that would have been a big test to do on him to see if he had it on his own hand, which would have been, going back to what Arctic said, is there the possibility that somebody else was at that accident scene? I don't know. That's a weird situation there. I'm curious. I'm going to have to look into that myself. But yeah. Anyway, we're moving forward. Checking the chat, make sure everybody's good. Right.
Hi, Mom.
Right. Good point, CLK. Very good point. Not that it, well, nope, wrong one. Hold on, you guys. I'm sorry. I just did something wrong. Hang on 1 second. There's a link for you, Mom, in Discord if you wanted to join us. I'm sure you're busy. You said you were, but I always like to give you one anyway.
To a tree, or did he? Did something else happen? Was someone waiting in his truck? If that person was the same person on the phone, once again, we just have to keep in mind this couldn't have been a cell phone call. So you would have had maybe people, more than one person working together, if they were going to try to ambush him in some way like that, or harm him like that, which I just don't know if it's very feasible in this case. I wish, of all that I've looked into with this case, I wish there was a lot more information about this crash. It'd be great to see a police report on this, just to get a better sense of what really happened on this night, because this becomes a bit of a sticky point for his brother-in-law later.
I have not yet, Mom, but I will check it out.
And I don't know if I don't think that anyone really has the answer to this. I don't even know if the sheriffs that investigated this really know what happened in this instance. But let's get back to the story and continue. The Circleville letters began once more in earnest, as well as Mary Gillespie and her immediate family. Elected officials were also targeted. Mary admitted to the affair taking place, but insisted that it only began after the first of the letters had been delivered. I have read a lot of people talking about this case, analyzing this case. Nobody believes that's true. I have not found one comment thread from anybody saying, oh, well, yeah, that seems reasonable. You start getting letters from some mystery person about you having an affair with someone. You're not having an affair with them, but after you get these letters that are threatening your family, sure, you decide to go ahead and have an affair with them. It literally does not make sense. But what we do have here is her at least admitting, yes, there is an affair going on between her and the superintendent of the school. Let's continue. Despite all of this harassment and the scandal that made her the talk of the town, Mary managed to keep her job. 6 years after the campaign had began, whoever was behind this took a bold step in furthering their tactics. While at work, Mary noticed a sign en route that threatened the life of her daughter. Angered by this, she stopped the bus and removed the sign. She noticed a box tied with a string to another post. Inside was a crude booby trap in the form of a pistol. Thankfully, the trap failed to execute at all. She called the police, and they quickly discovered that someone had made a crude attempt to file off the gun's serial number. Police traced the gun to Freshour, who, not for the first time, insisted he knew nothing about the events. Freshour stated that the gun went missing long before. So this is a very interesting turn. And that was a very brief way of telling what actually happened here. She's driving the bus. She's taking kids to school. She sees this sign that mentions her daughter. I've seen that it's vulgar. I've seen that it's threatening, but I have not seen the exact wording that was on the sign. She goes and she sees that there's a box that is attached to this sign, but she takes the whole thing into the school bus. She doesn't open it at the side of the road. She doesn't contact police and say, hey, there's something out here that has to do with this harassment I've been going through. Can you guys check it out? And police, up to this point, have talked to her about how to properly collect evidence if there's something like this going on. For some reason, she ignores all of that, but she brings this box into the school bus. She takes the kids to school. She drives home and then decides, hey, I'm going to try to see what's in this box while I'm sitting at home. She pries the lid off. She says that it's been heavily glued and it took a lot of prying for her to pop it open. She sees a gun in there that's being held with styrofoam, basically keeping it in the right position for shooting at the right angle. And she kind of thinks, well, it's probably not a real gun. Could be a starter pistol or something along those lines. And apparently she doesn't report it to police for a few hours. Some other things are going on at home. She goes through those things first and then goes, oh, well, I better take this gun or this box with a gun in it to the police. So her steps around all that are very questionable. And because of the fact that she moved it, the investigation into that area is a little bit tampered with. They still are able to go there, check. They find some footprints. I think they find tire prints as well. But that's about it. There's nothing else really in the area that helps them determine what happened there. We're going to get to some testimony from someone else from that morning as well that might give us a bit of clarification into it. But let's continue here. Freshour takes handwriting test. Police had Freshour take a handwriting test in which he had to copy some of the Circleville letters. The investigation was criticized for the incorrect manner for administering the handwriting test. The sheriff was satisfied that Freshour was the Circleville letter writer, or that the handwriting was close enough at least, and he arrested Freshour for attempted murder. The trial began in late October 1983, and even though he had an alibi for the day of the booby trap attempt on Mary's life, he was convicted. Freshour maintained his innocence until his death in 2012. And what's interesting is he was incarcerated for 10 years based on that charge, and the letters continued. Letters went to the sheriff. Letters even went to Freshour in jail, talking to him. So it's pretty curious, because if you look into at least what Freshour says about the court proceedings, and he has a huge document that he has released. I think it's over 120 pages or so, 164 pages. A big part of the trial and a big part of his conviction has to do with those letters, and essentially getting the judge to believe that he was part of writing those letters, and that those letters were written by the same person that made this sign with this booby trap. And for me, that is the weakest point of this whole case after looking into it, is the association between the booby trap and the letters. Now, the thing is, there was multiple signs that were being left around, supposedly by the same person that was writing the letters. But to link this one specific sign to the letter writer, I haven't found anything that's been very strong in terms of deciding that. But the court of public opinion, I mean, there was articles being written about this all over the place. Some of these articles actually stated that he himself had admitted to writing some of the letters, And he has refuted that. In his paperwork, he's very clear that he never admitted to that, that once again, this is the sheriff lying to protect a sloppy investigation and not really finding the Circleville writer. So very, very strange things going on in this case. While serving his time, Freshour was considered to be a model prisoner. In the decade that he was incarcerated, the letters carried on regardless. All postmarked Columbus, and Freshour was not sentenced to prison anywhere near Columbus. Even the prison wardens doubted that Freshour was guilty of writing the letters. And they had a really good reason to. Not only was there strict policies about letters coming in or leaving the jail, everything is checked. He was being physically checked whenever he was meeting with someone. He was strip searched before and after he would meet with them. They even had periods of time where they put him in solitary confinement specifically to make the letters stop, and the letters didn't stop. They were still going out while he was in solitary. So the authorities at the jail were convinced he is not sending these new letters. As a matter of fact, they even put him to a polygraph test and specifically asked him about those letters. Does he have anything to do with those letters since his incarceration? But they also touched on the letters that were brought up in his trial. He said, no, I do not have anything to do with writing those letters. And he passed. Take that for what it's worth, because we're talking about lie detector tests. But really, really interesting stuff here. And it's just unfortunate that he's no longer around to defend himself. From what I see, he did have a blog, but it looks like it's been taken down since. I will have a link to his long document in the description box below, so you can dive into that. If you're really going to look into this case, I think you have to go through that document. It's got pieces of the court transcripts, which it's the only location where I've been able to find that stuff. It's a little frustrating because you'll be reading a court transcript and all of a sudden it'll just stop and he'll jump to a different document, or he'll jump around within the conversation. But the first 30 pages are all written by him and his feelings about what's going on, that this is basically a large type of conspiracy that is going on between the sheriff and the school district and some other people, all covering up these bad, evil things that they're doing. What's strange about what he wrote in those first 30 pages is the tone of it is basically supporting the Circleville writer. He's basically saying, hey, the stuff that this writer was saying, a lot of it is true if you actually look into it. And his letter is written to the FBI. He's trying to get the FBI to look into this at some level. So it's weird because when I first started reading that letter, I was like, wow, it really seems like, he's supporting the Circleville writer. So isn't it possible that he is actually the writer, that, he's trying to, once again, get people to believe this message that he's putting out, just in a bit of a different way. However, when you can...
Hey, everybody, real quick. I just posted Miss Barb's for Timmy's Legacy, the Cash App, with what she's going through right now. It would really help her out if anybody was able to possibly donate to help her in that scenario, to get her covered so that she can get things handled like she needs to. And that's the link right there for it. If anybody's interested or available to do that to help her out, it would be amazing. And I promise you, very much appreciate it if possible. There's the link right there. And again, it would be so very much appreciated if possible to help her out. She's in a bad situation right now and kind of stuck. So thank you to anybody that chooses to do that. You are so very much appreciated, and God bless.
Consider he's in jail. The letters are still going out. He takes a polygraph. He passes. It gets pretty tough. While he was in prison, he even received a letter that stated, "Now, when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all." That letter strikes me a little weird. Is he trying to make it sound like, the author, I don't mean Paul, is the author trying to make it sound like the letter is coming from the sheriff or coming from someone that was actually prosecuting Paul in some way? I don't know. Just that section in the middle about when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? If nothing else, it's alluding to the fact that this letter writer was writing to Paul previous to this, and I really haven't heard any mention of that before, or that this person was having a conversation with Paul, maybe even face to face. And I haven't heard him really give out any theories about who that would be necessarily. So moving over to mysteriousuniverse.org, we get a little bit of insight into someone else that might have seen who was setting up that booby trap. Mary Gillespie told the sheriff one of the other bus drivers told her that she had been driving that same road about 20 minutes before Mary Gillespie found that booby trap at exactly that site. And when she went by that very same intersection, there was a yellow El Camino parked there. A large man with sandy hair was standing there. When he saw her come, he turned around and acted like he was going to the bathroom or something, but seemed also to be avoiding any kind of identification. The description of the individual does not fit Paul Freshour at all, and Paul had a very solid alibi for this time. There was no attempt at all to follow up on that lead. If they had, they would have found that another possible suspect in this case had a brother who had a yellow El Camino.
Another problem, another lead that wasn't followed up on for whatever reason they could have possibly gotten an answer out of. That kind of bothers me a little bit, to be honest with you. Just saying.
They were laser focused on Paul and didn't look at anyone else.
Exactly. And we see that in a lot of these cases, sadly. They get tunnel vision. They focus on one specific scenario and never look at anything else. That could have been the answer to the whole thing, you guys. You just don't know. So, and that's what Arik was talking about earlier about the El Camino. It's obviously something that is known. We know about it how many years later, but the police didn't even look into it. At this point, it's moot now. It doesn't, it's not helpful. So still, that's why I like this here, because this gave some more details into the letters themselves, other little things that weren't put out, so on and so forth. So that's kind of why I couldn't find this link at first. It was buried in my downloads for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway, I found it and I'm glad we're able to listen to it.
So here we're getting some other potential angles. Could someone accidentally mistake someone's hair for being sandy versus the dark hair that Paul had? Possibly, but there is...
We saw a picture of Paul. His hair was quite dark, folks. There's no sandy blonde, and his color hair are not even close. I'm sorry. The only way I could possibly see that being what it was is at the sun, but still, even then, you can tell the difference in dark brown, sandy blonde. And he had a very, very strong alibi for that day anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Some footprint analysis that is done at the scene. I saw in Paul's documentation, he actually has some notes from someone that was hired to analyze those footprints, and it seems like Paul's foot is far too small to be the same shoe that made those footprints. So there is some pretty good question here about, was he really that person or not? And who could the owner of that yellow El Camino be? Well, let's press on forward here. And since we're covering an Unsolved Mysteries case, why not get some info from unsolvedmysteries.wikia.com? Once again, we can see they've got a little slideshow of the letters here, showing some of what I question.
Thank you, Doodle. I didn't want to say all of that because I didn't know exactly what you wanted said, but there it is right there, guys. Again, to the link that I just posted up here for Barb's Cash App. Based on what Doodle just said, if anybody's able to do that to help her out in that sense, it would be so very much appreciated. Where did the link go? Good Lord, I just put it in here. Hold on. I'll just drop it again. There it is. And she also has a Venmo. Thank you, Doodle. There we go. And there's no need for her to be embarrassed. She's part of this family, and we all understand. But thank you for putting that up there, Doodle. I didn't know exactly what to say, so.
Yeah, we've all been there at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unless you have Venmo, Phil. It's Venmo or Cash App. Are what the two things are that are out. Like I said, I wish I could do something myself, but it's just not plausible right now. I don't know of any other way that you could, Phil, besides those two. That's okay.
Question in terms of maybe there was more than one letter writer. We've just got some very different type of text going on between a couple of these letters, but let's get some more detail. Ron received a phone call from the alleged.
Do you have PayPal, Phil? I thought there was a PayPal as well, Doodle. I didn't know for a fact, but because you didn't post it, but
Writer. The call seemed to confirm Ron's suspicions on the identity of the writer. He grabbed his gun and left in his pickup truck, even though the writer claimed to be watching the truck. A few minutes later, Ron was found dead. So I just wanted to let you guys hear how it was worded by Unsolved Mysteries. I don't know if you can really support that information. Only his children were there, apparently, and he told his children that he was leaving. I don't think he said to his kids, you know, hey, yeah, I found out who this guy is. I'm going to grab my gun and go confront him. So I don't know where this assumption quite comes from. Several residents soon received letters stating that Sheriff Radcliffe had been involved in a cover-up. And once again, if you look at Paul's information that he sent to the FBI, it's lining up with the type of content that the writer is sending out to the public, talking about the sheriff being involved in a cover-up. Apparently, this is a second-generation Radcliffe to be in that role, and the Radcliffe family has been sheriffs in this area. It was for like 60 or 70 years or something. So is it potentially, you know, a family that's been in power a little too long that might have gone corrupt? I think it's something that should be considered. The trap had a box which contained a small pistol. If Mary had pulled the sign off a certain way, the gun would have fired. I have a big question about that, because how bad was this trap that it didn't fire? And even in some of the court documentation, there's constant notes about how shoddy this trap was. What is the likelihood that she would be able to pull it down? She didn't realize that it was a trap. She didn't realize that until she got home. And even then, she didn't believe the gun was real. So the way that she was treating that object, I can't imagine that she was being gentle because she thought something might go wrong, or that there could be an explosive or something like that in there. Oh, and by the way, she's taking it onto a school bus with a bunch of kids. It really makes no sense. So some people do question the trap. Was it even at that location to begin with? Did Mary possibly have this at her home? Is she involved in some way in this setup? Something very interesting that happened around this is Paul and his wife wound up separating and getting a divorce, and his wife moved onto the property that Mary lived on. And apparently Mary and his ex-wife were very close. And if you think about this, who would have access potentially to a weapon that was owned by Paul? His ex-wife certainly would. Now, keep in mind, the ex-wife of Paul is actually Ron's sister. So she could also be a suspect in this herself. When you start looking into this, it's just like a spider web of possibilities. And every one you go out on, it just branches off into more and more different directions. It was determined that the gun had belonged to Paul Freshour, who had recently separated from Ron's sister. Paul, however, claimed that the gun had been stolen. And I don't know if it was great for him to claim that the gun had been stolen versus I don't know where it is, because apparently he stored this gun in his garage. And because he claimed that it was stolen, when he eventually was up for trial, they were able to ask, well, did you report this as stolen? And of course, police were able to go through those records and say, no, we never had any report that a gun had been stolen from this guy. So that just him phrasing that he thought that the gun could have been stolen was probably not the smartest thing for him. Paul took Sheriff Radcliffe to his garage and showed him where he kept his gun. One of the other interesting things is when they were there, the prosecutor or the defense asked the sheriff, "Hey, while you were there, did you notice any ammo for this gun? Did you find ammo where this gun was stored?" No. Then they started going into the materials that made up the booby trap. Did you find this type of twine? Did you see this type of box? Did you see? And the sheriff was just replying, no, 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 no. So basically, all the items that it would take to build this booby trap that hopefully you would think they would try to trace back to their original locations, none of that stuff was found at Paul's home. On top of that, according to Paul's documentation, no, there was no fingerprints of his found on any of it, including his own gun. Really, really bizarre. Although he was never charged with writing the threatening letters, they became a crucial part of the evidence against him. A handwriting expert testified that Paul was the letter writer. Mary also testified that she believed that he was the writer after his wife visited her with the same suspicion. Okay, so just keep this in mind. We've got a guy going through a divorce, and all of a sudden his wife, who might be the letter writer herself and might already have a way of knowing about this affair, is going to the woman supposedly having this affair and saying, "Hey, it could be my husband that's writing these letters." Paul's boss also testified that he was not at work on the day that the booby trap was found. However, Paul did have an alibi for most of the day. However, he did not take the stand in his own defense. Probably another mistake, particularly if he was innocent, but I know that it depends on legal strategy. There's all kinds of other different considerations that come into play there. In terms of it being aired on Unsolved Mysteries, the original air date for this episode was November 11th, 1994. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe and Mary Gillespie declined to be interviewed for the story. I'll have a link to the Dennis Farina episode in the description box below, and you'll see Paul is interviewed and speaks a lot throughout the story. So you can check that out.
You know, I didn't really think much about that side of it. Arctic, do you think, or Mama Bear too? Sorry, Mama Bear, I keep forgetting that you're up here today. Please don't be angry. But was it ever a thought that maybe Mary could have possibly been involved somehow? I mean, I know it sounds dumb to put it out there as in the fact that she wrote the letters about herself. That doesn't make sense. But with the other side of things, possibly, you know what I mean? She refused to talk about it in more than one situation, Unsolved Mysteries, and I believe she refused, as did many people with the 48 Hours episode too. So I don't know.
But what reason would Mary have to frame Paul? The two of them had been fairly close, from my understanding. And why would she put a sign up about her daughter?
I mean, that's true. That's true as well. I had a couple people say that Mary went right to the sign with the booby trap, knew how to disarm it, whatever.
Well, I mean, and I've thought about that because the trap didn't go off. I mean, and if she wasn't expecting it there, it should have really gone off. So, I mean, I have thought about her as a possible suspect.
And then, of course, her and Massey possibly because of what may have happened to Ron. You know, that's where my thoughts went with that. But I don't know, you guys. It's just a theory, you know, little thoughts that we have when we look at this stuff. It's just, I don't know. This is such a weird case. The whole thing is so strange. And thank you to anybody that may have chosen to donate to Barb to help her in that sense. It's so very much appreciated. God bless each and every one of you. I promise you, she appreciates you so very much. Thank you again.
For yourself. Recent information uncovered by Martin Yant and others has suggested that there were at least 3 letter writers involved in the case, none of whom were Paul. One was believed to be the son of the superintendent who Mary had an affair with. What's interesting about that is in some versions of this story, they talk about the letters being somewhat different and that some of the early letters were signed with a W. The superintendent's son's name is William. So it is possible that he could have been a writer of possibly some of the early letters only.
And see, that goes back to the theory that there was more than one writer. He's saying that there's a possibility that there were up to 3 different writers throughout this whole thing. That's interesting. Once, the copycat effect, when somebody does one thing, you see the effects of it, somebody else jumps on the bandwagon and tries to do it too. It could be that. It definitely could be that. But I'm curious as to who the initial, the person that went after the Gillespie family is the one I'm really curious about, per se. Critical says she's driving a bus, sees a sign on a pole, and stops to read it. Don't think so. Why would she be looking at a pole while driving her bus? I don't know how the sign was put out there. Critical. A good point. It's a good point. Now, this could be something that, because the signs were put out beforehand, that they were looking for them, per se, possibly, and was looking around as she's driving and noted, are there any more signs now, so on and so forth. It could be that, or it just could be not, I don't know. It's a good theory, though, and a good point, Critical. I appreciate that. Thank you, Doe Girl. We appreciate it. Yes, prayers for Barb, please. Absolutely every day. Phil says we've all been there. Hell, I live there every day, but dying poor is part of my evil genius plan. So yeah, I think we all live in that sense too, Phil. Thank you so much.
Maybe all the letters, but definitely that he could have been responsible for the letters directly talking about the affair. And when you think about the intent of this person and these letters that are being sent, why do they want this affair to end? I mean, that's what they're being very clear about. They want the affair to end. They want, when that doesn't seem to work, they go to Ron and they want him to conduct his own investigation and to tell the school board about it. It seems to me that the intent of this person to have that affair end would be probably to protect the superintendent's wife, which either it could have been the wife herself that was writing these letters, or one of her children if they knew that this was going on. Outside of that, it could have been someone that might have been interested in Mary. Maybe was she having more than one affair? Could have also been someone that was also interested in the superintendent. Could there have been someone else that he was having an affair with that found out about Mary, and maybe he wasn't spending any time with the first girl anymore and she got mad and started writing these letters? It's just, I'm telling you guys, it's a spider web. The second was to believe to be a co-worker who was infatuated with Mary. The third was believed to be Paul's ex-wife, Ron Gillespie's sister. It is believed that the ex-wife's boyfriend was the man seen next to the El Camino on the day that the booby trap was discovered. One of her relatives had owned that type of car at the time. And the assumption here is that she borrowed the El Camino, but her boyfriend actually drove it and used that to go set up the sign and the booby trap. Which is a really interesting twist. And the reporter that's talking about this, Martin Yant, notes that once he started releasing information about that yellow Camino, the reporter started getting death threats and threats of being sued. When I'm looking at this in hindsight of, researching this, Paul's ex-wife seems somewhat suspicious to me. Outside of that, if you look through all of Paul's documentation, it's really strange because there's this thing where it seems like he doesn't want to consider that, or he doesn't really go into the possibility that it was his ex-wife that was doing this. That would have been the perfect defense for him if he was in court. If he knew that his ex-wife was doing this, he could have brought that up and completely blown out this whole case, but he didn't. So to me, I'm wondering, was he protecting her for some reason? Maybe because he was part of it in some way. Maybe he didn't write the letters. Maybe she was the one writing the letters, but maybe he was helping her to investigate. Like maybe she caught wind that Mary was having this affair and he went and found out about it. If you read through what he wrote in that large document, he has some pretty intense detail about this affair. He knows where they would go on their halfway point when they were going off together to go stop, have a drink. He knows a lot of detail about the mechanics of how that affair worked. So
and that tells me that this sounds like somebody had followed them, and stayed on top of them with this whole thing every time they were doing something. That's pretty wild to me. Kind of in a sense stalking, you know. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Leslie, I'll post it up here real quick for you to see. Here it is. It's on the screen right now, Leslie.
Could he have been kind of like the private eye for his wife, and then his wife was the letter writer, and then he didn't want her to get nailed? But then you consider that they go through a breakup and they get divorced, and essentially he wins everything. He gets the kids, he gets the house, he gets to keep his money. But then when he gets busted and he gets charged, all that goes back to her. Even his pension went to her. Wouldn't he be mad enough at that point to come clean and say, I know who did this. It was my wife that was doing this the whole time, my ex-wife? Well, in his documentation, he also states at one point that if you talk to her about things now, that there's no way she's going to lie because she has since become religious.
What about in the beginning, you guys, if Ron was writing the letters, the husband, to scare the two into stopping the affair, possibly? I've thought about that too. You know, I mean, anything is possible in this type of a situation, but what if that's how this started off and it turned dark and ugly? And then, you know, the whole situation with him happened and all that. I mean, it's just something else I was thinking about. This is going to drive me nuts. I just feel it already. So, again, just another little theory there to think about.
There are another set of letters that come out way after all this goes down. We're not sure if it's the same writer or not, because once again, the font has changed.
That's a good point, Critical. Very good point. And I still think I felt from the beginning there's more than, and I agree that there's more than one writer on this too.
Changed. This person is now claiming that they know how the original writer was writing, and they explain that font. They say that there are more booby traps that have not been found, or at least weren't being reported by the authorities. And they specifically state that the old letters were written by a teacher named Mary. And they say that I told you about Mary because Jesus is with me now. I think it's pretty interesting and maybe a little more than coincidental that you have Paul talking about his ex-wife saying, oh yeah, she's religious now, so I would absolutely trust what she says. And then you have these new letters being delivered where someone is claiming, hey, I'm telling you about this because I'm religious now. And I have not seen anyone make that connection. Now, I haven't read through every single bulletin board there is out there on this, but I find that connectivity really, really interesting. I think that there could be something to that. Is his wife possibly only responsible for those last few letters written in a different font? Maybe she's trying to throw the investigation in a different direction. I don't know. Understanding the motivations in this case is really, really tough because there seems to be so much going on. Now, Sitcoms Online does have a bulletin board thread going on this case. There's actually two separate threads. I'll have links to both of them down below. Really, really interesting reads. A lot of great theories going on in these. A couple of areas where it looks like family members potentially kicking in. It's tough. I don't know if they're believable or not. This one in particular.
Amen to that, Arctic. He says religious or religion has nothing to do with it. Some of the biggest liars and most corrupt people hide under the veil of religion. A lot of them do. That's sad too. A lot of the dirtiest, nastiest people hide behind the veil of religion, folks. Remember that. I mean, hell, you guys remember I covered the Mandy Yates situation? That whole thing, it was all based on religious aspects of everything. So just saying, guys. That's a huge theory, or a huge point. No Mo. Are you singing or something, SRB? No Mo. No Mo. Just saying. No, oh, no. Okay. No, Leslie. That's this case. Barb hit a deer and is short on cash to pay her insurance deductible. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I threw that on screen. Maybe it was misunderstood. I'm sorry, Leslie, if I didn't clearly describe it to you. My apologies. Peg, yeah, agreed. I got you now, SRB. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely, Peggy. 100%. A lot of the cases we looked at have some kind of a religious veil on them, per se, as Arctic would put it. Okay, that these people are hiding behind it and trying to throw it out there to be the reason why they're doing what they're doing. Nope. Good point.
Particular is kind of interesting because it does call out, he says that he is the grandson of Paul, and it calls out that his grandmother's name is Karen, and that information isn't very widely known. In a lot of these conversations, people don't even seem to know the name of the superintendent, which is Gordon Massey. But if you dig into Paul's documentation enough, you can get all these details. So I don't know about the family, quote, family that is speaking on these threads, if that stuff's very reliable, but the rest of the threads are really interesting. And I was able to find links to a lot of other information, which I think is definitely worth your time if you're going to look into this case. Now, in another thread on Sitcoms Online, the Cars 1986, who's a senior member, and I believe I've talked about this account on the channel before. I really like their way of thinking and breaking things down. They reached out to the investigator / journalist that had his life threatened, Martin Yant, and they got a bit of a news story from him, and this is as of April of 2016. So let's see what this theory is about. It's interesting to note here that the letters they were receiving were written in two different forms. Some were written with the large block style writing, and others were written with a more normal style and were signed W. Gordon Massey's son was named William. They wrote, according to Paul, 4 or 5 letters to him, and that there was no violence in them or anything, just that we knew who he was and what he was doing, and we sent him the letters. Then the letters stopped. In the summer of 1977 is when Ron Gillespie received the phone call, which ultimately resulted in his death. Fast forward to 1983, which is when Mary Gillespie would see signs along her bus route that targeted her daughter. This is when she eventually found the booby trap attached to a sign. It should be noted that in 1982, Freshour and his wife went through a messy divorce, and Freshour kept their house and custody of their children. Not once during the proceedings did his wife mention anything about him being the writer. Then, after the divorce was finalized, his ex-wife moved into a trailer on the property where Mary Gillespie lived, and it was only after finding the booby trap that his ex began to claim he was responsible for writing the letters. Another worker for the school system had repeatedly made advances to Mary, which she rebuffed. When she began the affair with the superintendent, this made the guy jealous. All of the initial letters targeted the affair, and the initial letters were written in 2 different forms. In my opinion, the son of Gordon Massey wrote some, while the jealous co-worker wrote the others. It should be noted that Paul Freshour lived in a different county altogether and worked at a beer plant 50 hours a week. There's just no way he would have known the numerous people in Circleville, let alone intimate details about their lives. Now, what is interesting about where Paul worked is apparently he was in the right city for sending the letters. So he could have.
Yeah, absolutely, Leslie. Just worry about that baby, the grandbaby, and you don't worry about nothing else. That's the most important thing right now.
Potentially been sending the letters from work, but Martin Yant's description of her in terms of Paul's ex-wife, quote, she was a very, very angry, manipulative woman who was still planting negative stories about Paul in the early 1990s. One final tidbit, the co-worker was charged with the rape of a young girl and while on the run committed suicide. So this is a bit of a different spin because we have the coworker in this case being someone that Mary knew and that was attracted to Mary. I don't know if it could have been the flip situation that maybe this was a coworker that was also dating the superintendent. But in any regard, the letters do seem to circle around the school, at least this particular batch of letters. And it's tough because
that's another scenario theory too, possibly, that maybe this Massey, the superintendent, since he liked to put himself out there, maybe he was having more than one affair and made somebody else jealous with this and that person, and or Mary herself. I'm not trying to say that these people are that way, but you just don't know. These are other possibilities, in my opinion. Oh, okay. Got you. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you. I didn't realize.
As I told you guys, there was over 1,000 letters sent. However, for letters that wind up in this story and that
I
are
agree.
discussed in this story, or that you can actually find for yourself, it's probably less than half a dozen. So it's hard to know the scope of these letters. Did they get into other people's personal lives as deeply as they did into the Gillespies or not? It's very, very hard to answer. But once again, a different twist on a possibility there, and just an interesting note about Paul's wife. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, Paul died at the age of 70, June 28th, 2012. His obituaries here just mentions that he had also served in the U.S. Army. He was a graduate of Franklin University, received a master's degree from Central Michigan University. This is a guy that was educated. Would he have made a bad decision in terms of trying to use a gun where he tried to file off the serial number but didn't do a good enough job and they were still able to trace it back to him? I struggle with that. Seems like he was probably a bit more educated and maybe a little smarter than doing something like that. Have the letters stopped now that Paul is dead? Yes, but they actually stopped a little bit before that as well. They did go on through the entire time that he was in prison. I'm not sure how long they went after he was released, but you had them consistently happen while he was in prison. And I don't know what was the catalyst for the letters ending. If it really was this other person that Mr. Yant was talking about, this person that might have been enamored with Mary, that killed himself when he was on the run, maybe that's why the letters stopped. Maybe the letters didn't serve Paul anymore once he was out of prison, and that's why the letters stopped. I don't know. I really don't know what the catalyst is for that. Were the letters sent by someone who wanted to protect Gordon's marriage, like one of his family members, or someone that wanted to end Mary's relationship with him, like one of her family members, or someone else just interested in her? Was she possibly having more than one affair, or could she have had an admirer? They do seem to be trying to end the affair and her marriage by sending a letter to her husband. Could it have been someone else that Gordon was having an affair with? And I think that's where I have to leave it. I don't know who else would be in consideration outside of that. It's someone with interpersonal knowledge of Mary and her family, and what's going on with her outside of her family. So in a way, I feel like it's someone that cares a lot and is close to either her or Ron or Gordon, the guy that she is also sleeping with, or possibly Gordon's wife. But it's someone that is close to this love triangle that is going on. I want to throw that your way and ask your opinions on it. Let's talk about it in the comment box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this episode. I know it was a bit of a bear to go through. There was a lot to cover in this one, but I really liked digging into it. I liked that there was multiple layers to find. There's kind of the blog version of this story. There is the thread version of this story. And then there's Paul's extremely long document version of the story. So there's a lot to try to cross-reference and support or refute information from other stories. A lot going on with this one. So feel.
All right, and that'll be the end of all of it, guys. And I appreciate you guys being patient so we can run through all that. That gave a little bit more detailed information on some of the stuff, and I thought that was important, more names and stuff like that. So either way, I appreciate you guys being here for it. Again, any other thoughts, theories, Mama Bear, Arctic, besides what we've talked about already? Any theories or opinions on this as of now?
He was right about one thing. You will go down one rabbit hole and then end up going down 5. So there's so many twists and turns and threads to this one that unless they ever recover an envelope and get DNA off of it, we'll probably never know who actually wrote all the letters.
I gotta agree.
I agree with him. See, these letters do look like they could have been written by different people. So
yeah, 100%. I believe they were truly. Like I said, the initial Gillespie family harassment is what, of course, started it, and then I think people may have seen what happened there, decided to do their own copycat side of this too, which is, I don't know. I don't know. It's really crazy though, guys. This case is just crazy, and I truly feel it. Honestly, God, don't feel there's ever going to be an answer to this. I just don't. Not at this point, especially. Like Arctic said, if they come out and find an envelope or something that was touched by one of these people, and they get some DNA off of it, since we are growing, in technology and stuff, maybe. What are the odds that person's still even with us, though? Who knows? You know what I mean?
more of the odds that they even have the evidence preserved, since they thought that Paul was guilty of everything. So
and we've seen, how many times now have we seen law enforcement destroying and getting rid of evidence at the point after so many years? That's becoming a regular thing. So if they even had evidence on anybody else, because the sheriff, like you just said, thought everything was Paul, period. So anyway, guys, that's the Circleville letters. And I still have questions about Ron's death. A lot of questions. The truck accident, I have a lot of issues and questions about that too. Again, something we'll probably never get answers for. But that is the cold case of today. Mama Bear, Arctic, is there anything to add to the show for today besides what we just covered?
No, that's going to be about it.
That sounds right, guys. So I think that's going to do it for the show. I appreciate everybody being here, and anybody again that has decided that they wanted to try to help Miss Barbara by donating to her situation, please know how very much it's appreciated. Barbara is she has a lot of, she struggles. She's put everything she's had into Timmy's legacy, making her signs and helping other people. And she's run out of all of her supplies, so on and so forth, and has come out of her own pocket for that kind of stuff. So when she runs into a situation like this, there's not a whole lot to reach for her. So thank you to anybody that chooses to do that. And God bless. That's amazing. And I know not everybody's in a situation where they can. We all respect and understand that. You never have to explain that, guys. Just know that we appreciate the thought too. Okay. So thank you guys again for being here. Thank you all for supporting that as well. I think I may be here in a little bit later too. It is my wife's birthday, so we'll see what happens in that aspect. I don't know what her kids are surprising her with, but they don't trust my mouth not telling her, because I don't like keeping secrets from her, so they don't tell me anything. We shall see. If you see me, it'll tell you that nothing was done. I know we're doing something this coming Saturday, so we'll see what happens. But I much appreciation, like our Sarby just said, to all of you guys. If I don't see you later, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Don't forget to love yourselves, love each other, and don't change a thing, because you're the beautiful people. And we will see you guys all very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Life's a journey. Let's make every moment shine. Together we share our hearts so intertwined. Each time you tune in, we're dancing in sync. With every story told, just let your soul think. A little laughter, some love, we're flying high. As we wrap up this episode, it's not goodbye. News on the airwaves, spreading joy and cheer. Thanks for being with us, we'll see you right here. Kick back, take a breath, leave your worries behind. This podcast is magic, a treasure you'll find. With every moment shared, we light up the way. Join us next time for more laughs and play. A little laughter, some love, we're flying high. As we wrap up this episode, it's not goodbye. News on the airwaves, spreading joy and cheer. Thanks for being with us, we'll see you right here. Kick back, take a breath, leave your worries behind. This podcast is magic, a treasure you'll find. With every moment shared, we light up the way. Join us next time for more laughs and play. So hit that subscribe, keep the vibe alive. We're riding this wave and it's set to thrive. With smiles all around, let's seize the day. In this podcast family, worries drift away. A little laughter, some love, we're flying high. As we wrap up this episode, it's not goodbye. News on the airwaves, spreading joy and cheer. Thanks for being with us, we'll see you right here. So gather round friends, it's time to reflect. In this joyful moment, what's next to connect? Let's cherish the laughter, the joy that we spread. Together we'll thrive until our hearts are fed. See you next time with stories anew. Can't wait to share more with all of you. So hit that subscribe, keep the vibe alive. We're riding this wave and it's set to thrive. With smiles all around, let's seize the day. In this podcast family, worries drift away. So hit that subscribe, keep the vibe alive. We're riding this wave and it's set to thrive. With smiles all around, let's seize the day. In this podcast family, worries drift away. So gather round friends, it's time to reflect. In this joyful moment, what's next to connect? Let's cherish the laughter, the joy that we spread. Together we'll thrive until our hearts are fed. See you next time with stories anew. Can't wait to share more with all of you.